Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll, please.
Mr. Foley? Absent. Mr. Myson?
Here.
Mr. Axel?
Here.
Mr. Chandler? Mr. Pridemore?
Here.
Mr. Yezia?
Here.
President Gilbert?
Here.
Attorney McGrail?
Here.
Treasurer Whitsett? Here. Clerk Warren? Present.
Approval of agenda. I got one change, and it's just a rearranging of items. I would like to switch item B and I. I will come to the top of the, will become B, and B will become I.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
We probably moved and supported that we accept the agenda with the amendment. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment on the agenda. Seeing none. Approval of minutes, October 10th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Support.
Been moved and supported that we approve the minutes of October 10th as presented. Questions on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Consent agenda.
I motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Been moved and supported that we accept the consent agenda as presented. Questions on the motion? Roll, please.
Trustee Yezia?
Yes.
Trustee Myson?
Yes.
Trustee Axel?
Yes.
Trustee Pridemore?
Yes.
President Gilbert?
Yes. President Adams, stormwater project update. Hi, Tom.
As of right now, everything, the construction is pretty much complete except for the one segment of asphalt pavement. He's supposed to be in to pave that tomorrow unless it rains. All the storm sewer is done, and so then we would only have pretty much the cleanup after that. But I'll say the main portions are done up in that one paving section.
Have we gotten a handle on what's going to be returned to HD?
We've put together an inventory, and Marcus and I have gone over pretty much anything that's, on that list we plan on returning to HD, but we do have an inventory, and anything that's not on the inventory that's been, we paid for, it'll be charged to the project. So what if we either have it or it gets charged to the project?
Okay, because I don't think, in talking to Marcus, I don't think we want to keep anything on hand that we can't use immediately.
Yeah, I think there's a couple manholes that we can't take back. The structure themselves because of where the openings in it are, but we feel we can use those on a future project. But other than that, I think we intend to return everything back.
Let me share with council, there was an issue in payment. We paid on pay estimates, and we were paying on change orders, not being told that the change order was part of the pay estimate. So in effect, we overpaid to date, approximately $53,000. The current payment that's due is $43,000, which we will deduct from that 53. Okay? There was a request by the contractor that we do this in thirds. No. They didn't voluntarily tell us that we overpaid them. So it is my comment to council that we will take the whole 43 that is currently due and deduct it from the 53. And they will still owe us 10 that will come off the next phase. Any questions for the engineer?
So what portion of this project, if any, will not get completed by the end of winter, at the end of the construction
It
season?
should be, let's say, I think it should all be done. I mean, we just had that one section of pavement from Olin to Main Street to be done, and then there's cleanup of the sidewalks are in, everything else, the storm is all in.
And those big, cement, I guess we call them, the cylinders that are laying out on.
Those
your
pipes,
division.
those are, like, some are actually, they were over-delivered, so those are going to be back. Those are all going back.
So you, on top of the construction being completed, hopefully there will be no remainder, no leftovers, no
No,
eyesores to look at.
no, I'll be done.
Okay, moving on. Item B. Cement.
Good evening.
Excuse me for a minute.
I thought we were doing the pre-qualification.
Yes.
Yes, this, yeah.
And also the Clark Street update and your recommendation on our
The sidewalk.
weather vane pavement.
Okay, we can go over both. Clark Street, we did manage to contact CN, and we submitted the plans to them last week.
Yes.
We found a contact, and they are reviewing the plans. The gentleman said he's going to take it to his project manager and see what they would require for the crossing across the, our sidewalk crossing across the railroad tracks. So that's in motion. In relation to that, we did get two quotes. There was a Semco subcontractor ripping off the sidewalk, and we thought he was going to completely remove the entire segment and put it back. So the initial discussion was, can we put it back in 5-foot segments instead of 3 existing? And they had no objection to that. We did get the quote. Semco actually offered to pay for the first 90 feet, and then their subcontractor quoted us for the remaining footage. And we also got a second quote from a different subcontractor, and we feel that they're both a little high for this time of the year. So our recommendation to President Dilbert was to wait and bid the entire work with the Clark Street paving next year.
But the segments that were taken out by, were being done by the gas company, well, not by the gas, those will be put back.
They will be restored. Yeah.
And that section right off of Haven Ridge, the first 90 feet, they agreed to put it back at the 5 foot, the new regulation,
Correct.
compared to what they took out, because they took out a whole section, not just a spot. But the individual slabs that they took out, you know, where they may have taken out one slab every, you know, couple hundred feet will be put back at the old dimension.
Yeah, they were 3 foot wide. They took it out completely, 90 feet, and they agreed to put it back at 5 feet at no cost to the village, which was
So when we do our project next year, the first 90 feet is already done.
We're going to be back then in, but when we do anticipate, hopefully at our own cost, putting it in the rest of the way, 5 feet.
Yes, because that's the regulation now.
Okay.
Yeah.
correct. So that was the sidewalk.
Oh, so did,
I'm sorry, go
was
ahead.
that part of the Clark, that was a Clark Street update or no?
Yes.
Can I have a question on that? I'm sorry. Go ahead. So will there or will there not be like a curb as part of this, the Clark Street project?
Was not designed that way. We're gonna keep it the same section as is right now, which is just gravel shoulder. A curb would be better for the pavement, but it will cost a lot more, and we have to put a storm system to collect all that water. So I could guarantee you it'll double the price of the product.
Go on.
Okay. What was the second item you wanted to talk about?
Your thoughts
The
on
ravine,
weather vane.
weather vane recommendation. Isn't that the same as the
Performance roads.
Performance roads.
Performance roads.
Were you going to speak on performance roads, or was
I
the
can.
representative from performance going to speak? I mean,
I'm going to present my recommendation to council, and the performance road rep is here.
okay,
So we can toggle it then, or right now, it's up to you.
you can talk about it now.
Okay. Performance Road was here and presented to the village the product. And there was a test repair done about 2 years ago, and the patch is working. However, it's a new technology. We are not familiar with it. We visited the location, and it looks like it's deteriorated around the patch. The patch is still intact, but around it, the concrete continues to deteriorate. So I'm talking to contractors and the geotechnical engineer. We'd like to get a second opinion on this. And by saying that, we'd like to put a small bidding package out next spring, because we couldn't get anybody to give us a price this year. Basically giving a contractor, or several contractors, the opportunity to look at these streets and give us a price of a conventional repair. That means fully saw cut the edge of the concrete, clean it, and then put a seal in the joints. This way the water does not get in between and crack the concrete. So that was my communication back to President Dilbert, is let's wait. We don't feel comfortable with, we don't have enough history to feel comfortable with this product. I'm sure it will perform well. And I think the representative is here, but we don't have enough history to make a recommendation to council at this point. So,
So the work that they were proposing to do, or we were entertaining the thought of them doing, was in fact to patch repair certain areas. It was not to, what you're suggesting in the future is to saw cut out entire slabs and replace entire slabs in and of themselves. It was to patch
we're not taking out entire slabs. We're gonna
portions of it.
saw cut longitudinal along the joints, full cut, and clean out all these cracked edges. And then essentially, you fill it back and you seal it. And this way the water does not get in between the slabs. Performance Road product, they take out the cracked material on the surface, but it needs a base strong enough to hold the product. And if it's all the way to the gravel, that patch would not work. And that's what conventional fix is, to go all the way down to the gravel. And
Unless it would be the conditional way is a nice square, you know, the report. Whereas performance in some situations, you know, you're actually like on a taper, you know.
think of a cold patch, the way that you have a cold patch, same method. And don't, I mean, we're not discounting Performance Road at this point, or in the spring. We will ask them for a quote, and we'll compare them. And we'll look at the warranties and the performance and all that and we'll make the recommendation back to council again.
Is it a question of the material that they use, the composite being a different density than the cement, and there is causing friction, causing problems with the surrounding material?
No, it's just not enough history for us to feel comfortable with that patch is going to work, preserving the entire slab. It's sealing where it's sitting, but anything beyond it, it's not. So we feel it's like a Band-Aid, and very expensive one. It's a good product, it's good technology, I mean, very interesting. I've read about it, but it's just we don't have enough history, you know, or to make a case to council, oh, this has been going on for the last 5 years. We feel comfortable to recommend it. Any other questions?
So basically, in essence, it adheres to itself well, it doesn't crack it in and of itself, but where it connects to it doesn't, maybe it's the wrong language, but it doesn't adhere to, it doesn't stick to.
It does adhere, but it does not seal around it. So,
There's still a potential for water to seep around those.
and I do have pictures I can share with council. We're still looking for the original photo. I think we're trying to get a hold of the previous
Do you
engineer.
know which road it was on?
This would be on,
Manning.
right at the entrance.
Okay.
When you walk, I think 2 or 3 slabs in, it's right in the middle. It's kind of a triangle piece.
Okay. Your pre-qualification bids?
Sure. I sent a communication to President Bill dated November 2nd. What we want to do here, and we've done this with other municipalities, Macomb Township, Lennox Township, and the city of Orchard Lake. This is a pre-qualification standard that we put together for any contractor who wants to do water, sewer, storm, and paving projects within the village limits. What we ask for is their NDOT pre-qualification and backup of all their financials, their and work history, and any litigation, just basically reviewing their pre-qualification, their qualification before they submit any bids. And I attached to my letter a resolution that we've used before, and it's basically have these items A through H, which is basically what the contractor is going to be submitting for the committee to review their material and make recommendation to council or the village to accept them as a pre-qualified contractor or not. Once they're on this list, they could be called on by invitation, they can be called on an emergency basis, and they could be open bid for any project within the village. These go for a 1-year span because on that pre-qualify these contractors on an annual basis. I believe it's on February. So they have that pre-qualification active for 1 year, and then every year we ask them to resubmit their package just in case any changes. They have different categories. We're going to be looking into that. So we're going to be compiling a list of contractors for the village that are pre-qualified for water, sewer, storm, and paving. And basically, if a contractor is not on this list, they cannot work or allowed to be work within the village limits on a public project. That means your water extension, sewer extension, storm, rehab, paving, anything related to those 4 categories, they have to be pre-qualified to be able to work within the village. This will ensure that the village gets quality work and streamline the bidding process.
So your request is,
My recommendation to the village is to establish a pre-qualification committee and a pre-qualification standards for water, sewer, storm, and paving contractors in accordance with the resolution proposed.
Question? To your knowledge and awareness, would the current contractor that's wrapping up the current project that's been going on for a couple of years, would that contractor have met these qualifications?
don't answer that, please don't answer that. Don't answer that. Next question.
And a different question would be, how, in general, how stringent would you say are the pre-qualification standards that MDOT has?
They're identical to MDOT.
No, I mean, how stringent are MDOT's standards for the pre-qualification? Would you say that they're pretty,
Very thick submittal, but all contractors gone through this. The current active contractor, if you go to MDOT website, you'll see a long, very long list of contractors that are pre-qualified with MDOT. And they've gone through this procedure and even more. Because MDOT asks for a lot more financial records, and we don't. We rely on MDOT going through that process, and then we add to it what we need. So they've been trained. And they have a copy of their submittal they just sent with the check, and they're done.
So if we have, excuse me, losing my voice, if we have a project, after that, we get the list. It's just standard, we ask them to submit bids, and then
Of
we
course.
go according to,
Yeah, we're not discounting the bidding process.
okay.
But we're opening for other options, like by invitation or an emergency contract. You don't have to, once you have that list, you can pre-select these contractors because you've gone through the pre-qualification
They would have been.
review.
Yeah, right, okay.
But anything, like Clark Street, for instance, we will go through the bidding process, either by invitation or post it on Mitten. And we will put that in the advertisement that they have to be pre-qualified with that and also with the village, which is of the same.
Do we have any estimate as to how many contractors, under current circumstances, would be pre-qualified? Or like, is there a total right now as to how many are pre-qualified by MDOT to these standards?
It's going to be open. It would be good to get at least 4 to 6 of each category. This way you're not locked.
No, I'm just saying, like, are there, I mean, hopefully more than 4, but I'm just saying, there's,
There are thousands of contractors.
that are pre-qualified.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool.
In each category, MDOT has a lot more categories than what we have here. We only have 4. They have pre-qualifications for structures, grading, drainage, roadside work, traffic, you name it. And then each category have at least hundreds of contractors listed. And some contractors are listed in multiple categories.
Okay. So we will sit down, myself, the DPW superintendent and engineering will make sure that we're touching all the bases as to what we're looking for in a contractor.
Yeah, the resolution spelled out exactly what you need, so that's basically what you need to look at to make this active, and it'll be effective next month if you approve it tonight.
Okay, if no other questions, the motion's in order.
Do we have a resolution number? No?
17-010. 10.
It's just, if council likes to go move forward with this, I mean, it's a normal resolution. Somebody needs to read it.
Oh, it needs to be read?
Yes,
Oh, God. Huh?
it's a resolution.
It's just the title.
No, whereas,
It's like 4 pages.
Yes.
go over it.
I can read that.
Anything like to read?
3 pages.
Okay, okay, I make a motion to approve resolution 17-010, a pre-qualification committee and pre-qualification standards for water, sewer, storm, and paving contractors. At this point, do I read it? Whereas Village of New Haven pursuant to the authority provided in its enabling act as desirous of establishing a committee to review and approve contractors for eligibility to bid for work on village water, sewer, storm, and paving projects, and whereas the establishment of standards for pre-qualification is established and utilized by the Michigan Department of Transportation procedures as utilized or similar to those utilized by the Michigan Department of Transportation are deemed to be desirous and suitable for work as standards in the village in pre-qualification of bidders for work on village water, sewer, storm, and paving projects. Now therefore be it resolved, a village pre-qualification committee for water, sewer, storm, and paving projects is hereby established, consisting of the village engineer, the Department of Public Works superintendent, and village president. The committee shall meet from time to time as required in order to pre-qualify bidders for work on village projects. 2, bidders, that was number 1. Number 2, bidders shall be required to timely submit materials as determined by the committee. Such submittals shall be made at least 30 days and no more than 90 days prior to the date established for the submission of bids. Submittal shall indicate whether it is for an annual pre-qualification for a specific project. Bidders shall be approved or disapproved by the committee not less than 15 days prior to the next date established for the submission of bids. Eligibility to bid shall be determined based on the review of information supplied by the prospective bidders and any other information received by the committee relating to the proposed bidders' past performance on work of a similar nature, financial resources, equipment, facilities, and other available information bearing on the question of whether or not the proposed bidder is a suitable person to bid on the work. Bidders with annual pre-qualification shall provide the committee with an updated information at least 45 days prior to the anniversary date of their initial pre-qualification approval. The committee shall approve or disapprove the annual renewal prior to said anniversary date. 3, compliance with the pre-qualification standards of the Michigan Department of Transportation shall be deemed in compliance with the standards for pre-qualification established for the village projects in the following information as provided and found to be satisfactory by the committee. A, furnish a copy of MDOT Form 1313 entitled Confidential Experience Questionnaire and Financial Statement, together with current annual update. B, furnish the village with evidence of current eligibility as determined by the pre-qualification unit of the Financial Service Division of the Michigan Department of Transportation by furnishing a copy of the Michigan Department of Transportation Form P1306A. C, the person or persons authorized to receive payments for work performed and the method for delivery of such payments shall, such as mail, personal delivery, etc. D, the names and titles of persons authorized to approve change orders and other on-the-job decisions during construction. E, information concerning involvement of the contractor, its shareholders, or affiliates in litigation, arbitration, or contract disputes involving the owner, owners, representatives, subcontractors, insurers, suppliers, or other parties on projects during the 5 years prior to submission of the information required herein. Litigation shall include state and federal proceedings, including bankruptcy proceedings. Additionally, any and all persons' injury accidents in the last 5 years in which they were named as a defendant for injury out of contracted work. F, the history of the contractor concerning violations of the Michigan Occupational Safety Health Act rules on a project during 3 years prior to the submission of the information required herein. Information on any and all construction site accidents involving injuries to persons or damages to property 3 years prior to the submission of the information required herein. G, information for a period of 5 years prior to the submittal involving any disputes or issues with the owner or owner's representative concerning scope of work, quality of workmanship, delay in completion, delay or difficulty in communication, insurance, and issues involving permitting agencies. H, provide a list for the 5-year period prior to the submittal of all work performance for municipalities, city, village, state, federal, county, including the name and addresses of each such municipality, date work started and completed, nature of the project, amount of the contract or change orders, if any, and the number of change orders. The village reserves the right to qualify or terminate qualification on behalf of the contractor. Notice of the proposed termination of qualification and opportunity to be heard shall be furnished to the contractors prior to the termination. No notice will be furnished if qualified lapses on the basis of expiration of time. 4, pre-qualification packages will be received at Tri-County Engineering Consultants at 48701 Hayes Road, Shelby Township, Michigan 48315. All packages shall be accompanied with a $125 an hour refundable review fee. 5, prior to each bid opening, any previous qualified contractor wishing to submit a bid shall submit MDOT Form 1300, Statement of Current Contractors and Subcontractors, together with a check and a amount prescribed in the project's advertisement for the bid document fee. Such materials shall be submitted to the village engineer at least 6 days and no more than 30 days prior to the bid opening. Those previously qualified contractors who the village engineer determines qualify under MDOT Rule 247.43 shall be issued bid documents and shall be eligible to bid the project. All others shall have their bid document fee returned.
Thank you so much.
Supported as read.
Been properly moved and supported. We adopt resolution 17-010 to establish a pre-qualification committee for the village of New Haven. Any questions on the motion?
Just a comment, President Building, under item 3H, it says, second line, city, village, village. The second village should be township. And I will send the word file to the clerk. 3H, second line. Sorry for the typo.
Any other questions?
Can read it again.
Trustee Mexico?
Yes.
Trustee Myson?
Yes.
Trustee Kezia?
Yes.
Trustee Kramer?
Yes.
President Albert?
Yes. I have a request from Mr. Addis. He had an emergency that he must attend to, and he's requesting that if we could go into our closed session, which was scheduled for the end of the agenda, to get our legal updates now so that he can be excused.
I make a motion to go into closed session. Supported.
And
7:33.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta fix that.
We promise you we won't be long. Will not be long. So there was a motion
Yes.
and support.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
What was the time?
7:33.
We'll return to open session. Can we get a motion to that effect?
I make a motion to return to regular session.
To 7:52.
7:52.
Second.
The properly moved and supported that we return to regular session at 7:52.
I motion to proceed as advised by our legal counsel.
Second.
The properly moved and supported that we authorize legal counsel to proceed. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item C, update on 1415 audit.
That's you.
Come on forward. Back there.
Ken does it.
Hello. We have the draft.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Do you want- We have the draft. We have the draft. We've had it for about a week now. We have some manager notes that we have to be going through and looking at. There was one that they wanted us to look over. Should I elaborate on what I found?
Sure.
One of the management notes asked why we had a tax overpayment payable on the books. It's been sitting there forever for $18,000. So in my investigation, I found out that it stems back to 2009, 2010, and 2011. In 2009, the personal property tax was, they had decided, it got billed for fire
Fireworks.
damage. They decided that, they were not supposed to charge fire to the personal property tax. Then they decided that they're not supposed to charge highway or, what was it, highway and cemetery. So there was a journal entry made for $53,000 stating that was for all three funds. Then later on in that fiscal year, they decided it was only fire that they were supposed to take off and get back to the personal property, so we owed these people this money of $21,000. Then, so that's been sitting there. Then in 2010, what I found was, and this one was a hard one, what I found was that there was a journal entry made for $46,000. The personal property had been charged for cemetery, highway, and fire. It was not supposed to be charged for fire. Then what happened was they decided that no, they weren't supposed to charge for either the cemetery or highway again. So that's what the $46,000 represented. And then they refunded the $46,000. Then they adjust, only reason I found this was because I went in the box and found the bill that it was charged because we got money from everybody. They had been charged the three funds, and then the system was adjusted out, saying that we didn't charge those funds, and the refund was given out for that money, the money that we had not taken in. Then, in 2011, they didn't charge for anything for those three funds. So,
These are for commercial.
commercial personal property.
Yeah, personal property.
Commercial personal property. So in 2011, nothing was charged for cemetery, highway, or fire, which they shouldn't have anyways. Fire should not have been charged at all 3 years. So in conclusion with all that, we under-collected probably $38,000 for those 3 years. So we have to come up with a plan and talk it out. I don't know what the ramifications is. We have to talk to the auditor about that, and we have not given the notes to Yogo yet to decide what we have to do with the situation. So that's where we stand right now. We have to have a conversation with Yogo and figure out what we have to do to correct this, if there's a correction, or if we just move on and go forward. So that was one of the things that was found in the audit. That's been the main focus I have on the past week for me looking at stuff right now. So that's one of the things we have to go forward. There's a couple of other management notes that we have to go through, and we have to sit down and talk to JR about. So that's where we stand. There's stuff that we have to get that cleaned up, get that payable off the books, or what we have to do to get that off the books. So
Going forward, are those three funds going to be charged?
I don't know. That's what we've got to figure out what to do. We got to figure out how to handle this whole situation. I don't know what the tax ramification is. We have to do anything with the county. The whole bunch of things, factors. Did we pay any back? Did anybody go? Any of those payments go to the county? Did we get them back? And if we pay? I mean, there's a couple factors that we have to look at first before we can decide what we have to do with it. So we'll figure it out.
The thing that baffles me about this whole situation is that it's 9, 10, 11.
Yeah,
And how come it wasn't caught?
prior to
back
this,
in
Exactly.
9, 10, 11.
that was my question.
Yeah, that's the first thing that we
You know, I mean, the audit that were done back then,
Right. So this taxpayer thing's been sitting there.
that's one thing I will say about Yo and Yo.
But they did the 13-14 and didn't catch it. How they catch it in 14-15?
Yeah.
Was this the same audit company performing
Yep.
for the previous years as well?
Yeah,
Yep.
but it's how some of this is being carried forward, and it doesn't show
Well, that's why
up.
they really didn't have any good due diligence, if you think about it, nothing to compare to, they didn't have any good stuff from before and after. I mean, that's what's been taking so long, is they've been, with the sewer fund and the water fund, is basically that, is this reasonable from last year to the next year? So they've been asking for 13, 14, 14, 15, 15, 16 numbers to make things to see if anything's reasonable.
Now, is this underpayment going to hold up the draft?
No, the draft is basically done, it's just one of the management notes that we had to rectify.
We had to
The
draft.
housekeeping thing, so we have the draft.
Yeah.
This might be an adjustment to the draft, and then we move forward. So we'll find out some more this week, and we'll let you know what's going on after that, so.
Thank you for all of your hard work.
No problem. We're getting there. It's getting there. We're working it, so.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions?
Roughly,
Any
how many
questions?
management notes were there? Roughly?
I think there's only 3.
There was only a couple.
That wasn't too, it wasn't.
This was the big one.
That was just a big one,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't have drafts.
Well, we're getting there. All we can do is get this stuff taken care of and move forward, so that's the goal.
I'll have Sandy send out the
I'll send it out.
management notes.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Landscaping for the welcome sign, it was suggested, or it was brought up that we give some consideration to doing some landscaping around the gateway sign. I think that's what it's being referred to, out in Gratiot and Maine. I don't know what's in mind, or do we want to turn this over to Parks and Rec, or do we have any suggestions?
Am I losing my mind, or do I see 2 benches out there already?
There's 2 benches.
Yeah.
If you ever get tired, you stop and have a seat.
Okay.
Well, since planting season's pretty well over with,
Yeah.
why don't we just wait until the spring and talk to Parks and Rec?
Yeah, because it's too.
They hate the beautification, right?
They want to get involved in some of that.
And we could talk to them about the Welcome to New Haven sign in front of McDonald's. Just throw a couple of things under there. Should you, with some meetings this
So we
spring.
can turn some of this over to Parks and Rec. They need some additional work to do. But yes, there were some benches that were put at the walking path over here. And I think there was 3 or 4 that was put in the cemetery, new benches and pads for it, because there's been some requests for people to be able to sit.
Where did the benches come from? Where did the benches come from? Like what group?
These come from Park and Rec, and the cemetery from the cemetery fund.
Should we make a motion just to get it on record that we have kind of requested them to kind of look into this?
I'm meeting with the Park and Rec chair Thursday, and it's to update her on some of these issues. So that will be on their agenda. Mr. Benjamin?
Yes. Good evening. Dan and I have been talking quite a bit about the Village Jasper, getting it cleaned up, getting some of the businesses, especially along Gratiot, and that to see what's going on. Just want to give you an update on the items that Dan and I have talked about over the recent few months. Hoffman's A1 service, which is on Haven Ridge Road there. I've talked to Mr. Hoffman on a number of occasions. He has removed some of the vehicles that were there that were either junk or he planned on repairing for some people. Evidently, he's still running a repair shop out of that building, which I don't know if anybody's ever been in it, but he's got more vehicles in there that are in disrepair that he will never, ever repair. I mean, he wants to hang on to them because he thinks they're worth some money, but they're junk, and he won't part with them. I have talked to a gentleman that has 2 vehicles there that he has now put up for sale signs in them, just to say that he's got them up for sale. The problem is underneath the ordinance, unless they're Mr. Hoffman's property, he can't have them for sale. Well, when I talked to him yesterday, he said that Mr. Hoffman was supposed to do some repairs on them for him. So so that gives him like 14 days to do the repairs. Mr. Hoffman hasn't been to the shop in the last 2 days, so I don't know if he's working on those. I haven't got an answer from him if he's going to do the repairs on those 2 vehicles for that gentleman. But I'll keep in touch with him, gentleman who owned the vehicles, and if Hoffman says, no, he's not going to do the repairs, I'll tell him he has to get them out of there and remove them. And he's got, I'll give him 7 days to get it done. Bryan and Sons, that has been vacated. Know that Bryan and Sons is no longer in that building. I talked to Mr. Lupo, who is the property owner. He's going to clean it up. He's probably got about maybe close to 1,000 tires that he's got to get rid of in that place. That's behind the fenced-in area. So that's going to cost him quite a bit of money to get rid of that. But it sounds like he's willing to do what he needs to do to at least the front of the building's clean. And that's what we wanted as well. It's on Gratiot. Wise Buys Resale. I spoke to that gentleman that owns that building. He's here tonight. he wants, I know his issue is that he has no special land use for the U-Haul business that he wants to run there. He has moved the trucks in behind the fenced area. He has about 3 trailers that are flatbed trailers or car haul trailers that are out in front. I spoke to him, he's going to keep them out of the easement area of the road, whether that's satisfactory to the board. I'm not sure if that's, if we can, he would like to maybe address the board and see what he needs to do to either get special land use for the property, or if he just has to maintain it, all the vehicles behind the fenced-in area. We have, the biggest problem we have is one that is on Clark Street, 30875 Clark Street. I've talked to the owner of that property, who does not live there. He has a land contract with the person that's living there. When I first saw the site, he had a PlayStation out in front, which you have to understand that on the east side of that home, he has 6 feet of property. That's all he has. The rest of that is road easement. So, and nothing can be put in the road easements, I've told him. He doesn't understand it. I have some pictures from the first time that I saw it to today, and he has brought in more garbage. I was there today, and there's dog feces in the yard, on the concrete that's in the road easement. He wasn't home. I have talked to the landowner, the husband and the wife. Today I talked to the wife, and they don't know what to do. I told them that they would probably should be contacting an attorney to find out how their land contract's written on who has to maintain the property. So I'm hoping to hear back from her. She was going to be here tonight, but she had a death in the family, so she said she couldn't be here. So hopefully that one there, we have issued a civil infraction to them. So, but that of course went to the landowner, which is Rustin Building Company. So there again, you're not dealing with individuals, you're dealing with a company. So that means you have to go after the president or the people that are the owners of the company. The other one is on Main Street here, which I've been dealing with for a while. Cindy Combs owns the property. There again, she does not live there. Her daughter is buying the house from her. They have cleaned up some of the issues that were a problem over there with the blight. They took down the added fence that she added because she had a double fencing there. That's been removed. But we've still got like tires spreading around the backyard, a lot of auto parts on the side of in the rear yard that's hidden behind some fencing, so evidently they think that's okay. But the problem is that attracts mice and rats and animals to get into it. So that's our problem with that one. Whether or not there was a civil infraction issued on that one, there again, I'd like to know if the board wants to either issue another civil infraction and put the $250 fine on it, or should we just issue a ticket? The next one would be the one on Salt River Circle, which was some siding, or that was missing off the one side of the house, the east side of the home. That has been repaired and complied with. The other business on Main Street, which Gary Higgins owns, which when I spoke to him today, he there again needs a special land use permit for what his storage he wants to do there. He was parking vehicles on the west side of the house or the building there that was in the right of way. So he has moved those. He has, he had 5 trailers in there at noon today, and there's only one left. The rest of them have all been removed or picked up by the owners. So that one's in pretty good shape. Now, whether or not we will let him do a special land use over there, do we need him to apply for a special land use?
He needs to apply. He was in here last week asking a lot of questions, but he never made the application.
Right. Right, yeah. I think I thought Lori was the one that handled most of that. She doesn't,
Yes.
she should know about it.
Yes.
The way he talked to me is that she said, I don't know, what do you need? What, you know?
She told him what he needed,
Okay, all right.
and he did not make the application.
Right. Now, I've talked to him a couple times, he wants to make an improvement on that building. At one time, he thought he wanted to put like an upper, he was gonna put some trusses on it with some storage area or actually office space above the unit, the building. But I think he's not going to do the storage or the office space, he's just gonna put a new roof on it because the building needs a new roof, and I guess he feels it might look better if he puts a roof on it with trusses instead of a flat roof. So, but he's willing to work with us on that, so I guess we have to give him the direction we need him to go.
Well,
Allow
I
this.
think, I don't know if that notification is gonna come from you, or that he needs to come in and make application for a special land use.
Right, yeah. That should probably come through the building official.
Yeah, so I can have Dave do that.
Yeah. So some of these Dave may have to work on a little bit and see what we can do with them. So, okay, if I talk to Mr. Higgins, I'll advise him to come in and get the application for a special land use and put that before the council then. Fenton excavating, I believe that's, is that under legal?
The building inspector said he was gonna take that, and to my understanding, he filed that. I don't know what his proceedings.
What is it?
Violations for various,
Yeah, no, maybe special land use
fill
permit.
without a permit, and a whole bunch of it on Victoria Street.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's,
He's got no certificate of occupancy also?
yeah, that's,
There's
Dave's been doing.
Dave's handling that one? Okay, all right, yeah, I thought so. I asked Dave about it, he said he was handling that one.
Yeah, that's been, if I'm not mistaken, that's been, I think it's been filed with the court already.
Yeah, about the old funeral home over on Main Street there, I think.
That's in motion.
Yeah, that's in motion, okay, all right. And then the last one that Dan sent me on was 26 Mile Road. They have removed the vehicles that were out there. After I talked to Ballard's, the one secretary, a week went by and nothing was done. Then I went in and talked to a better secretary that had more power, I guess, and could have ear of the owner of Ballard. So they were all moved as within 2-3 days. So that site is cleaned up. I did ask them about, they do say that they do have vehicles that come in there in the evening hours from wrecks and accidents and things that they park out there because the drivers don't have a key to get into the gate. So we know that's gonna be an off and on thing on that. So I don't think we have a problem with that. The other ones are civil infractions that we have underneath people that the water department had to go out and repair the curb stops. We have a Cerise Morale on East Brampton. She has, I spoke to her twice after the citation was issued, and she has denied responsibility for it on her civil infraction. So evidently, we'll probably have to take that one to court if we want to proceed. So if the board wants to proceed on that one, I do have the information to issue a ticket on it from the police department.
What was the damage again?
That was for where they had tampered with the water stop box to shut the water off. They were in the rears of their water bill. Water department went out and shut it off. I have a signed affidavit from Marcus about what happened on that one. And I believe Marcus is here if we have any questions from him on what happened on that. And then when they went back out to turn the water back on again, someone had tampered with the stop box. The cap was off of it. Marcus said that someone tried to shove something in there to wreck the stop box so it couldn't be turned back off again. And that was billed out to her because it was against the ordinance that they tampered with the water stop box and damaged it.
What would you been allowed at?
$200 because they had to dig it up to replace it.
Yeah, it was a couple $100. Yeah.
was one of the issues that I briefly touched on last month, but it was two of them.
It's like less than 500, less than 500.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one there, and then Russell and Teresa Thurston on Main Street was the same thing. We have not heard any response from them on that, about what they did on that stop box. And then they filled it full of gravel, so there again, it couldn't be turned off and turned on. There again, if we want to issue the second civil infraction on that, we can, or we could possibly go straight to court on that one.
I would,
Maybe the second infraction,
I prefer to go to court.
go to court.
We have to make an example.
Mm-hmm.
That we're not going to tolerate individuals tampering with the stop boxes. And we need to pursue this, and let's take it in front of the judge.
Okay, all right. Both of those, I'll get the information for the ticket for the one on Main Street there for Thurston's, and get both those tickets sent out over to the court next week. The other civil infraction that I wrote, I wasn't getting any reaction from a gentleman over on River Oaks Drive that had roofing that had blown off. He had patches all over the roof of tar paper and whatever. After I sent him the infraction of $100, I was by there yesterday, and the entire roof has almost been repaired. So we are getting some reaction. So the infractions are working. If we have to send $100 or $250 infractions out, that works over here. The policy that was over in the other communities I work was to give them a notice, send them a letter, send them a second letter, and then if we didn't get a response, then a ticket was issued. So, but the civil infractions are a good way to do it. It seems to work here. The biggest problem you get here is people say, well, they've been living like this for 15 years. And, you know.
And that's the culture we're trying to change.
Yeah, that's the course you want to change. So that's, I guess we'll go after it with great intent. That's, if you want to talk to the gentleman from Wise Buys, he's here to speak to the board. Yeah.
Some questions.
Hey, guys, doing? Basically, I'm just here to, give you a little background of our situation. We've, been there for 20 years, not necessarily Wise Buys, but my family's owned that property since 2005. We've been in business at the Coney Island since '99. So, like he just said, for 15 years. Well, that area, since I've been there, there's always been, some kind of parking there, marina, this and that. I understand, I'm with you guys 100%. You want to make it look nice, I get it. But if I showed you pictures from 99, 05, 2010, and then today, I guarantee you today looks better. And people that have been here for that long will see that. So I'm basically looking for direction. I put in 2014, I put in a paperwork for special land use, specifically for that. A letter was sent to me stating, show up, I don't remember the exact dates, I don't have the paperwork with me, to show up on the, 4 months later for a quorum. Then it was rescheduled. Then it was rescheduled for July. A couple months later after that, I showed up to the quorum, had my paperwork ready. One person was here, they canceled it. Didn't get a letter. 2 years later, finally get another letter. They're stating, show up on this date. 2 weeks later, get a phone call. It's canceled. Don't show up. Okay, no problem. I'm not trying to run away. I'm not going anywhere. My butt is on the line there. My whole life is there. We spent a lot of money on that place. In 2005, probably the worst time. And we made it through the recession, and we're still going to make it. So give me a direction. If we're on the easement, we'll get off the easement. If we're causing, I don't think it's blight. If you guys think it's blight, I'm sorry, but they're uniformed U-Haul trucks. Any U-Haul that you go by advertises those trucks. They park them outside. And our branch U-Haul manager wants us to park them directly there. I get it. City comes first, they come, that's going to come second. If we can't do it, we can't do it. But there's a lot of things wrong in this city, and I agree. they gotta get fixed, you know? And if we fix them correctly, like, for example, our building there, I have an apartment. You know, it's general business. That apartment's been there since like the 60s. You know, what, we gonna kick somebody out now? You know what I'm saying? It's like, there's multi-use there. And if we, you know, we can't come into agreement, you know, what am I gonna do? You know, pound my head on the ground and cry? No, there's gotta be a way around this, and I'm here, like I said, to
I think the
basically.
issue, if I recall, was what was happening behind the fence,
Okay,
or the fence itself, that was erected without proper zoning, proper permits.
that, I'm sorry.
And I know, I think you were scheduled to go before the ZBA, and at the time you couldn't see the quorum. Okay, so the building department, and I will talk to Lori tomorrow to get your hearing scheduled, that you were scheduled, like I said, back in 14, 15, whenever it was.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have enough members on the ZBA, and we could never see the quorum, and I think you were scheduled to go before the ZBA.
Yeah.
So we will get that hearing scheduled so that you can proceed. And if the ZBA doesn't agree with what you're requesting, and I don't know what your original request was,
I think I put a variance.
some sort of variance for something.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't have the file in front of me. So what you're allowed to do will be determined by the ZBA.
Okay, I understand. You're sending for the fence.
Right,
Okay.
and my understanding, the building department, when I talked to her extensively, you requested the meeting time after time, and I agree that, you know, it didn't happen, and that's on us, I understand that. But to my understanding, the topic that you were requesting to approach us on was the fence, which I guess has since been erected with or without approval, which is, I don't have a complaint about that. I don't think anybody does. You put a fence up, and please do, and put all your stuff behind the fence, absolutely. I don't care. I don't think anybody cares. I don't think anybody's gonna get you on that.
But it still has to fit the ordinance.
Well, right. But the stuff has to go behind it. And then that's just because you're not zoned for that. Outdoor storage is not part of
I
general
know.
business. That's not primary land
Like I
use.
just said, I have an apartment there, it's not zoned. So are you gonna kick them out too? Like, that's my point. I can get an argument and we can go back and forth. My asking to you guys is it blight, is it ugly to you guys that I have my U-Haul trucks there? I don't have a strip club, I'm not selling drugs on the corner. I have a lot of people from New Haven come use our trucks, hauling cars back and forth. I'm actually doing a service for, you know, Reverend Mac's brother. They need some food, we're giving them a truck for free. They're taking the truck, their truck broke down. Yeah, I've been in this community for 20 years. I coached football for 10 years here. I know a lot of people here. I've done good. I have helped, you know, plenty of things. And I'm not asking for a free pass. I'm asking for understanding, listen to me, man to man, this is what we're doing. And if we're caught, like I said, if it's blight, if it's ugly, okay. But is that ugly to you to have U-Haul trucks parked? And like I said, let's say they're uniform, they're parked directly, like, you know, one side by side. I don't have junk cars thrown on the side. Like I said, if I showed you pictures of 2010, 2005, you would say, yeah, that's probably better that you had that there. And I understand what you're saying, put them behind the fence, but we paid $1 million for that property. I need my property. I need to use it. That's not the, what do you call that? Yeah, that's our property that we paid for. We're not zoned for that. I'm asking, give me a variance. Let me zone it for
It's
you.
not going to be resolved here tonight.
It's not. I know that.
Okay, so you need to talk to Lori, and let's get scheduled.
And like I said, I had paid already for that too.
Yes,
Yeah.
so you're not going to be charged with that.
No, I know that.
Okay, but it needs to be scheduled, and a hearing needs to be held.
Okay.
Okay, when it comes to that apartment's been back here since the Linzine family over here. Okay, I'm 62 years old.
I know, you know more than me. That's what I said.
Okay, so that apartment probably will never become an issue. It's the fence, and erecting the fence without proper.
I can go into that situation, but we'll go into that day, okay?
Because we have to move on.
Absolutely. That's why I'm not gonna get into that. I'll explain that when we have to. But, you know, to make it easy, get somebody in there, pay me $2.5 million, and get out of it.
Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
I understand. Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks.
Can we?
Thanks for your time.
I have a couple of questions, actually more for Benjamin.
Chris?
Mr. Bailey. So you've been with us for, I believe, over half a year now. How many tickets, aside from the water,
Shut-offs and that.
the water meters, aside from those, how many tickets have actually, or violation notices have actually been written?
Well, violation notions, probably 20, 25, most of them are
You
either,
might be confusing with.
that's the small tickets that when I leave.
No, with the warning, so
Yeah.
violation notices with actual money attached to it. Starting at $100.
About 6, I think. It started with the water shut-offs, and then the one I sent out for the roof over in the subdivision.
That's including the two for the water?
Right, 2 for the water, and
So
then,
about 4 for general
and, yes,
properties.
for Mrs. Combs and the rustic building company.
Okay, because I'm just going to be blunt. There's a lot of people that are still not satisfied with, and I'm hoping that others can back me up here, because so far it feels like I've just been the one communicating with you, and so it seems like any frustration is just me. It's not. It's not. You look on Facebook where we actually have an extremely active community. I know we only have like a dozen or so people in the audience, but on Facebook you have hundreds of people, and 700 people in the one group. And there's a whole lot of chatter on there, and I know it doesn't count, you gotta take with a grain of salt. But these people are, it's a joke, it's a bad joke to them. They're not satisfied, and I'm hoping others can vouch for this. We need to see more tickets. And I know I've talked to you on numerous occasions, week after week, month after month, and so everybody has a sob story. And I understand that, but I've understood that for a couple of years, 2 to 3 years. You're not the first code enforcement we've dealt with. I did bring you up to speed, and I did make this myself and Trustee Hassick, when we interviewed you, we told you that there are going to be some property owners that are very, they're going to come up with every excuse under the sun. They're going to have a sob story. They've given us the sob story for years, and they've still given it to you for 6 or 7 months. And that, again, to this date, you've only written 4 tickets. And yes, there have been some properties that have, come into compliance. One of which was because it was, it went belly up, the business did. But in any case, there's many properties that have actually gotten worse under the watch, and people need to start seeing, the results right now, to my personal opinion, are not satisfactory. And I don't think I'm speaking just for myself. I'm hoping some other council members can chime in here, because, there's not hundreds of people in the audience. But on Facebook there is, and there's hundreds of people that are frustrated with this, and it's not going over well. People are not satisfied.
As I drive the community, I can see the improvements. And in all fairness to Mr. Benjamin, I think he's trying to follow the procedure that's put in place, because when we stop following that procedure, then we've lost all effectiveness.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay? Now, it's not going to get cleaned up overnight. And I think Chris, I think he realizes that, but it's that persistency that he stays after the ones and they start to clean up, because I don't know where you're seeing it.
I can tell you where I'm seeing it.
Please tell me, because I'm not seeing it.
Clark Street, there's actually a couple more properties I was going to touch base with you soon. There's a couple closer to the elementary school, so there's those 2 plus the one on Clark Street regular. Yes, the gentleman who was up here for the trailers and the U-Hauls and whatnot. Along 26 mile, there's a bunch of properties that aren't properly screened and whatnot. You can see there's just a whole load of junk and whatever. They're supposed to have screening that blocks the visual view of that.
Right.
All along 26 mile, and they're the heavy industrial on the east side of the tracks.
Screen from the road?
Semi-repair, just they're supposed to be screened for. I can pull the code right now.
Yeah. I talked to Lori, I spoke, when you and I touched base about the ones on 26, I asked Lori about those, because she's been here, I guess, quite a few years. She knows everything that goes on in the village here. I guess from what that was before, it was a bus repair, which was, if she brings up the GIS system and goes back about 4 or 5 years, that was a complete junkyard. I mean, it was garbage everywhere.
But we have to stop this mentality of, well, it's better than it used to be.
Right.
That we have standards and we have codes in place, and they're black and white. I'm just saying, they're black and white, and they're not meeting up to these. If they want to come in and absolutely, I applaud this gentleman over here for coming up here, and I would love to work with him and be somewhere in the middle and figure something out. But these people over the years, and again, you're not the first one, I've been on board for 3.5 years, they thumb their noses up, they're not making any improvements. A lot of times they get worse. Sometimes they get better for a couple weeks, couple months, and then they get worse. And it's back and forth. They're not making any meaningful changes to actually come into compliance. We got to stop accepting and good enough. That's what New Haven's been for decades, and that's why we have a reputation.
It's
That's
been
why
there
we
for
brought you
decades. You don't know
here.
what it's been for decades.
I haven't, but that's what I hear. Unfortunately, what you hear.
What you hear
becomes
doesn't mean a
reality.
grain of salt.
That's what we brought him in to
That's
do,
right.
is to
So allow
change
him
the
to do his
perception.
job.
Right, and he hasn't been. The ticket,
He
three,
has
4 tickets to
been.
me. Well,
He has been.
He's been here for 7 months.
If I can
We
inject,
need more meetings.
if I can
And I
inject,
hate to say that,
You were-
that's not my style.
if I can inject, so you were talking about how in other communities you were working in, you had like the rules of escalation, we'll say,
Right.
from letters to tickets and
Right,
whatnot.
which usually probably takes 3 to 4 months, or,
Do we, have we established that procedure here with the New Haven?
well, not until just recently, until we just did that civil infraction part, I believe. I don't think they ever had that here before.
They've had plenty
Or
of
it was,
warnings.
but it wasn't very.
Right, the ticket, we had a different ticket form and whatnot, but either way, we have had these communications, and again, I told you about this when we brought you up to speed before we brought you on board, that the prior code enforcement officer has, and look, our building department does have record of these.
Right.
We have manila folders, they're not in the BSNA computer software or whatever, but we have manila folders, and I told you about this, of our past communications with a lot, not exactly all of them, some I knew, but with a lot of these property owners. And they've thumbed their noses up at us, and they give us sob stories, they give us a bunch of different stories, and/or just ignore the fact of the matter. And you've been on for 7 months. Prior to that, I've been, again, 3.5 years, and a lot of these properties have done diddly to come into compliance. And we're looking at these, and again, we have a reputation, whether or not reality is what it is.
I think more has been accomplished since he's been on board than
The prior one?
was accomplished in the 2.5, 3 years that the prior.
Right, and a lot of that is because our legal staff, kudos to you, we did have a meeting of minds and everybody got on the
It's
same
going to take time
page.
for it all to get.
But again, the agreement was after these letters went out, which you did send the letters out a month and a half, 2 months ago.
Right. That's on, yeah.
That it was going to be a week to 10 days afterwards, we were going to write violation notices for each one of the properties that we discussed. And to my knowledge, I know you said 4, I didn't know that there were even 4 written. To my knowledge, there was only 2 written. But okay, 4. But, again, we had like a dozen of them on there. I know, and you've told me there have been certain properties, I'm not going to go into specifics right now, but certain properties that I've asked you, okay, well, did you visit them and did you write them a ticket? And again, I'm the last person that wants to do this to certain people, but a lot of these have gone on for years, and they keep giving you sob stories, and then you come back and tell me, well, here's their sob story. And I go, okay, I understand that, I acknowledge that. Did you write them a ticket? Well, no, I figure I'll go back next week and check it. And again, I hear that a month after month after month, and 3 or 4 months now that you say, I'll go back with them, I told them I'll get back in touch base with them. That's not acceptable. And I hate to say that that's not acceptable. I'm a forgiving and understanding person too, but these people are making 0 progress. And we get, a lot of times, the only thing that they understand is, hey, hit them in the pocket. That sucks. I hate to do that. I never want that to be the first resort. But unfortunately, these people have proven time and time again, and some of them might be a learning curve for you, but at some point, you gotta put your foot down.
But at some point, when
You have to look at it this way, Dan, how fast do you want to get the people in this community mad at you?
I told you, I give you a whole bunch of my business cards that say, if anybody has a problem, you tell them that Trustee Van Kirkhoff is really on your butt and trying to get these things running. I'll take any heat, I'll direct any phone calls, any emails, any in-person comments.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We take all the necessary steps and give them all the opportunity. If we rush them into court.
I didn't say court.
But if they don't pay the violation, then a ticket is issued.
Not necessarily. We could issue them multiple violation notices.
Well,
100, 250, 500.
But we're not collecting anything. It's not accomplishing anything.
Agreed, but it gets on.
Until we get them into the court. And the bottom line is the court gonna back us up?
Right, and that's something that we have to get a track record. We have to get our records on file. We take it on once, we take it on twice, we take it on 3 times. Not, well, we talked to them 4 times, and we thought we made some progress, but they didn't really follow through. No, you need documentation. And if, again, I don't want to piss anybody off. I don't want to rack up a whole bunch of money. It's not about the money, but we need documentation at least for if and when they continue to thumb their nose up, and we say, fine, let's go to court. And then the court sees, wow, they actually wrote them 4 or 5 tickets.
Chris, let me know when you're in the office again.
All right, yeah, I'm always in here either Monday or Tuesdays.
Okay.
I was in both Monday and
I saw you
Tuesdays.
today.
Yeah, I was in both. I wanted to go over, and that's why I wanted to appear before the board and say, hey, this is what's going on. What's your input? How fast do you want to write a money violation before you send them a letter, give them a notice first, you know? A lot of these are small items that you get, people, you know, parking across the public walkway with their vehicle. They had one over in Amherst that was doing that. He was doing that off and on with his large, there again, but he's got a commercial vehicle. It's not a residential house vehicle, it's actually a commercial vehicle. And when I talked to the wife, she says, yes, my husband's commercial vehicle. Well, they're not allowed in a residential area. So that's my next step is to, you know, the neighbor is complaining about it. So now but of course, when I come into work, there's no truck there because he's at work. So anytime this vehicle is in the public right of way is in the evenings.
So that's where maybe the association should take up that issue.
Yeah.
Right, probably, it's, you know, blocking the public sidewalk, that needs to be taken up, their association needs to do something. But I've talked to that association, the company that takes care of that, they don't seem to do anything over there, I don't think.
If I could add.
We took over the streets, right, in the subdivision? Would they be subject to uniform traffic? There's laws about left wheel to curb.
Are they in the alley or are they on the street?
No, they back up to the vacant property or the railroad tracks that are behind them, I believe. The railroad tracks are behind them. So they have no alley behind them to park their vehicles. And,
So
But it's
parking in
parking.
the
and
field?
being that it's condos, the front yard is not big enough for a long.
So are they parking it in the field?
No, they're parking it on the driveway. But his truck is so big, he's got a dually axle truck with an extended cab and then another 8-foot bed. So his truck is longer than what the setback is for the units.
Maybe we could talk to the sheriff's department and see if this falls under their purview with the uniform traffic code. Parking in fields is parking other than intended, and that's ticketable. Left wheel to curb. There's a lot of things that they would be more in their ballpark.
Oh yeah, Cliff has been quite helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's some things that I thought he was gonna touch that he didn't. There was a boat that was parked in the road,
Yeah.
and we don't take care of the road as
And
a
it wasn't
company.
attached to a vehicle.
No,
Oh, wow.
but he said he couldn't do anything.
Yeah, you can. It's uniform. We adopted the uniform traffic code.
Right,
You can't leave trailers with boats on them without a vehicle attached to it.
right. Even though it's
Commercial
white.
vehicles have a time limit. So I think we need maybe a conversation with the sheriff's department kind of, because you shouldn't be.
No, I can only go from property line in.
Yeah, you shouldn't be.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
but I did talk to the lady, and she said she would talk to her husband about either putting their truck on an angle over the weekend when it's there on the weekends, but then they can only get one vehicle in and out of the garage,
Yeah.
you know? So I mean, when you own a vehicle that's a commercial
Thanks for
vehicle.
trying to talk about it, though, I think.
Okay, we need to move on.
Well, if I can, before we move on though, real quick, if I can add, I do share the same sentiment with Dan about wanting to see, some more improvements. And I will give you credit, I do believe that there have been a lot of improvements over your time here. But what I would like to establish, if we could, is some sort of formal policy for that escalation. My time as HOA president for Decor Park, what I find that, what we do is we have one warning notice, then we go right into our violation fines. And I mean, I'm not saying that I want to get people pissed off real quick, but it is something that, when you do have a monetary value assigned to it, it does get more of that reaction.
Yeah.
And I really think that we do need to have some sort of policy set up where we give a warning with so many days, and if it's not met within so many days, then we move to the violation notice. If there's not a violation notice, if it's not paid, then we escalate it to a higher monetary value violation notice. We do that with Decor Park. We go all the way up and we'll take it to the maximum amount that we can, and if they still aren't paying it, then we do hand it over to our legal, and we've had a lot of success with that.
I thought when you guys met, if that's what you were doing.
Yeah, we're gonna do the warning letters went out, and
So
actually,
you just have
in the hallway here,
a-
afterward, it was supposed to be a week to 10 days. Remember, me, you, and Benjamin were standing in the hallway there, And he said, okay, so after these letters go out, how long do you want to wait till we actually start writing them? And you said, I don't know, about a week or so. I said, yeah, a week, 10 days. You said maybe a week to 10 days. And again,
Me?
to my, yeah, you're right outside the door.
No, I'm talking about when you guys met, when the attorney met and everybody, I thought that's what you guys were doing, were establishing the.
Not a specific time frame, but again, after the last 2 months ago meeting, I think, myself, you and him, Mr. Benjamin, did quantify, we said about a week after. And to my knowledge, only 2 went out. He's saying 4. I didn't realize that.
Well,
I said it just recently.
Then let's get together and let's establish a time frame. So there's no mistake, no misunderstanding.
Absolutely, but we've had 7 months. That time frame, even if it was a very long leash, we should have.
What you guys haven't, when you, attorney, Mr. Benjamin, Mr. Cowan got together, I thought that the whole purpose was to establish a very clear plan of attack, and obviously that was not accomplished.
It was in my mind, and that's
In
why I'm
your mind.
complaining. That's why I'm complaining, because that was supposed to begin the
Was
process.
it put in
The
writing,
tickets
was it
were
put in
supposed to
writing
go
as to
out.
what step 1 was gonna be, and then 10 days later, step 2?
7 or 10 days was supposed to, these tickets were supposed to go out for a dozen or so properties. And apparently only 2 or 4 went out.
Okay.
That's why I'm complaining. We need to
Let's get
actually
together.
act on this.
Share your schedule with me privately, and so that the 3 of us can get together.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Yep. All right, great, take your time.
Item F, the Vector truck rental. It has been brought up way too often about, the village rents their back, no, they don't rent their back. They rent out their services to a local business. To suck out a couple catch basins, and it's basic metal. And we build them out, and I think you got a copy of the latest bill in your packet. I think we have about $750 show-up fee and $250 an hour. Okay? Well, personally, I'm tired of hearing about it. What does this board want to do? Do we still want to rent out our services? Or do we want to just not rent it out, let the truck sit there and do nothing?
How much do we pay for the truck?
Huh?
How much do we pay for the truck?
We paid over $100,000 for the truck
Okay,
for no reason.
how often do we use it ourselves?
It rarely gets used.
Okay, and when we do rent it out, what kind of depreciation is on that vehicle?
It gets depreciated when we use it or not.
Yeah.
I know that, but I'm saying, it gets depreciated every year.
Yes.
You take a depreciation on it. That means we're losing value on the truck, and we're not replacing value on the truck if we don't rent it out, is that correct?
Exactly.
It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer to me, but I'm tired of hearing about it. I want this board to make a formal motion that we will or will not. Okay? That we will or will not rent out this truck. For example, a lot of communities will not invest in a Vector truck because it doesn't get used enough. And if you don't use these vehicles, they will sit there and rot on them. The seals will rot and everything.
How many rental requests do we get, maybe in a year?
Usually the schools or like Basic will ask us to come back there out some basins, or like the schools, like during the summers, some of their catch basins dry up or whatever, whatnot. So they ask if we'll come by, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, once in a blue moon, we'll go back there out a catch basin, like say if we had a contractor redoing a sewer line in Pembroke, so we went over there and vectored it out. But let me say this, we don't just go out to Basic Metals. If we have the truck out, which we did, then we'll go over it. You know, I let them clearly understand that, no, we're not at your beck and call. If we already have the truck out doing some work, then we will come and, you know, vector out those basins. So it's not hey, Marcus, be here at 2 o'clock. No, it doesn't work that way. Not at all. It just,
But the fact of the matter is, you know, we have a $750 show-up fee, and we do charge them $250 an hour. You know, so we're making money on the,
And providing a service.
What's the depreciated value, or what would be the book value for this Vector truck? I mean, would it be worth just selling if we're not really using it?
I've already tried to sell it. Nobody wants it. They don't. We were it's been used twice. So meaning it was already bought new, used,
Right.
somebody else bought it, used it, and then for some reason we bought it. So it's super used. I tried, selling it
A
to,
lot of communities
actually,
will not invest in them.
yeah, they won't get the usage out of it, so why even bother?
I mean,
They said they will call somebody.
they would call, most communities would call Deutsche or one of those companies. That's what they do.
Well, I think for me, the payment clarifies it, because when you sell it out there, it's kind of a surprise. Why is this public truck at a private business? But now that this is, the check's there, and it's, goes against the depreciation, I mean.
And they do pay.
Yeah, no, that's what I needed to know.
The only other question I have is the value that we're charging, is it aligned with what other communities, or, well, not, it's not communities, but what other
Yes.
services?
I called factory services in the area, and that's exactly what they.
Are we actually putting the word out that we got this thing? No, we need to put the word out.
The next question, do we want to have it? I don't know. Because it could become, like I said, most communities don't buy these vehicles because they just don't have enough use for them, but when they need one, they need one. And they typically call Deutsche or, there's 2 or 3 major companies in the area, but it's just,
I don't think council really needs to make a motion about what DPW does with the vehicle.
Does Richmond have a Vector?
No.
Do they need Vector services? Like, can we work with, maybe we could, work with the neighboring communities that need it.
We can share the information with the local DPW and just see, just see what's out there, But, of course, we don't want this to become a full-time.
No, it's not going to.
Could be a moneymaker.
But I think the important question is that what the DPW does with that truck, I just want it to become a non-issue, as long as we're charging.
Well, now we know
Now we
that
know.
we're building on
Right.
it, so that's great.
Exactly.
That's great.
Because I don't want this to come,
Put the word out.
raise this ugly head again.
Okay.
And I won't even request a formal motion. I think we're all in agreement that as long as we're charging, we're being paid, that we're good
It's
to
good
go.
business sense.
The next item, the Cinco update. And you had the letter from
That's another.
Commissioner Miller. And of course, you probably have all seen the news and the latest on the Sterling Heights lawsuit. But I'm also going to give you a couple other tidbits, just so you may not sleep all tonight. I think our estimated cost for the sinkhole was 566,000, and as we break it down to the current users of our system, it's like $2.24 a month,
$1.46.
$1.46 a month, okay? In giving consideration to one of the issues that we had in closed session, that if all of our users were paying fully, that this amount would not have to be passed on to the residents. And in fact, we could probably reduce everyone's sewer debt. If everyone, and of course you Mrs. Pryford, I love you. If everyone was paid, and this is the frustrating part that I'm going through right now in trying to resolve that issue, okay? Because we could actually reduce, and we've crunched some numbers 2 or 3 different ways. fully understanding that we need to maintain a emergency fund in our water and sewer system. You know, there's a percentage that's being recommended by the state that we maintain, I think it's either 15 or 20%. But with that being said, we would still be able to reduce everyone's debt if everyone was paying. Okay? So my next question is that we haven't passed on, we made an interest payment a month ago? Yeah. And at some point, we're gonna have to start making the interest and principal payments, okay? And with that user who hasn't been paying, I'm not so sure that they're gonna pay their portion of this. So I'm just making everybody aware that it's gonna be something that we may have to face, and it may take some additional legal action to get them to understand that this is a non-issue. This is a problem that was caused, that happened, and all of our users are gonna pay for it, not just 55% of them. So, forgive me for my passion. But it takes me off on that. Anyways,
But right now, the overall increase is minimal.
it's minimal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sign maintenance. Another issue that needs to be put to bed once and for all. The street signs in the condo developments are the responsibilities of who?
Does the village own the streets?
We own the streets, but the associations have been putting up their own signs. And we had this issue, I recall sitting in the audience a couple years back when there was a request to put a stop sign at River Oaks and somewhere. But the neighbor didn't want the stop sign. And the stop sign went up, the stop sign went down. The stop sign went up, the stop sign went down. Okay? Those signs should be at the request of the association. That board, because someone wanted a stop sign, but the sheriff department said, no, don't put one
You
there.
have to go through that first.
Okay, I mean, there's a procedure. So we get called to repair a sign or to put up a sign. And so we need to know who's responsible for those signs. Because right now the signs, particularly the signs in the Cora, do not meet our standards. They use 2x2 posts that are about 12 inches in the ground. That's why they tip over when the wind blows. We use T-posts that go about 3 feet in the ground. We even call Miss Dig before we install them to make sure there's no utilities in the area. That's why our signs stand. So who's responsible for the signs?
Signs on the easement, right?
Now, I will say this, and I know the answer, because when you read the documents that govern,
Master.
yeah, it tells you who's responsible.
You're looking at me, so I have a feeling it's the association.
It tells you who's responsible, and it's the associations.
So your point,
I'm not sure if he's from, I'm not sure if he's already familiar or not, but maybe this is something that he could just look over again, double check, and confirm with us on the next.
Because if the building's gonna be responsible, then we're gonna install them and install them right. Okay, and not these, and, you know, mind you when I say, it costs about $100. You know, when you buy the proper stop signs and the proper post, and it costs about $100 a
Are
sign.
you talking traffic control devices, or are you talking residential street names?
Both, either or. You know, because we get called out to, you know, a sign has fallen over. You get caught out to stand it back up.
Now, for that example, is that something now, you know, I'm Decorah Park, that one's in North. Is that, when you say it's the responsibility of the association, does the association come and hire DPW to replace it, or it's their responsibility 100% installation of the sign?
It's my understanding, and you can chime in, Mark, is that the association puts up the sign. I mean, those 2x2 posts, did you guys install those?
No, we wasn't doing those.
Right. So, if the association wants to add more stop signs,
We can't.
well, but if it's up to the association, as what we're hearing.
Sign maintenance is, but any traffic control device has to be approved by the sheriff's department.
Okay, so if it was approved by the sheriff department, then it's the association, what, goes to Amazon and buys stop signs and puts them up? Like, or is it that we then come to you?
There's
or-
village ordinances about signs.
Yeah, don't go
And
ahead and
right now,
right
most of the signs in North do not meet the standard.
Yeah,
The
they're too
lowest
low.
portion of the sign is supposed to be 7 feet tall, 7 feet off the ground. The lowest portion of the sign.
I guess the other
I'm
question.
6'3", and I can walk into a lot of these signs.
So I guess to rephrase my question, how did they get installed improperly? Was it the association hired the wrong contractor to install it? Like,
Bill
we-
put it in,
Yeah.
It was-
they put it in, yeah.
Bill put it in, I watched the market do it when we moved in. But he just,
Yeah.
Or your management company would handle it.
Okay. Yeah, and we do share the same management company, so I could whisper into their ear about getting that one replaced.
Could we just have them double check?
Well, for the maintenance, we're just talking about strictly for the maintenance, so.
Well, that's exactly why all the signs look different too. We've got different street signs in Amherst and street signs in Pembroke, because they all define how they want them to look, and they put them up when they build it.
Exactly, yeah.
It's association, I'm fairly positive.
Yeah.
but now, is this the case of villages requesting that all of the signs of the subdivision be brought up to code? Or is it a case of where they go, we take care of it?
No, we're not requesting that they all be brought up to code.
Okay.
Because the association installed the signs, and if the signs don't meet code and they become a hazard to a child,
Right.
it's the association.
Yeah, the visual
Like I
construction.
said, you know, there are standards that we install signs at, and they're MDOT standards. Okay, the type of post, the type of sign, like I said, the height of the sign, there are standards.
So we can get all the Crater Triad,
Yeah.
and if we're on the hook for it, we can talk to them about the standards that have to be met, when they have to be replaced. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. We will have to work with Decorah Park North, their association. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Decorah Park's signs are okay, right? I mean, we don't have any, I think, well, we did have the one stop sign that was tipping over at Wingham, I think. But I don't know if Dan or anybody has to fix that one. I know Dan talked to you about the one on River Road.
Yeah, I did that one.
Thank you.
Right after.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about that one in the past too. So we could work with Decorah Park North to get at least that stop sign fixed. Is it, now it's the street signs as well, or?
I mean, I didn't get a full ride through, I've heard about the one on, what's the road, River Road?
River Road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that
that
one
was
just
coming
comes
from
from-
Baltimore, so I cut through there, you know. But, you
Another
know,
sign
that
that says-
sign, like I said, it's in the ground 12 inches.
And if we do have to accept responsibility for it, we're gonna have to establish a resource to go to. So that through maybe Crater Triad can recommend.
Right, and yeah, and that's why I was saying, you know, I mean, is it, you know, we just take on purchasing these signs on our own, or do we
You know,
come to DPW and hire you guys to properly install that? I guess I'm a.
One of the questions will be, because you guys have nice signs, you know, 4x4 with plastic sleeves. We don't install that stuff at all. And some of the stop signs are not reflective. It's the MDOT standard, reflective prismatic, reflection on the stop signs. You know, ours is green U-channel post, 7 foot, reflective, green sign. Simple as that. No fancy stuff.
So
So that's the
do we go to DPW then and ask for a quote to get these signs?
Oh, yes, you can. And we go right through Dormer Sign, right up Charlotte, Michigan, and they'll have them there.
Okay.
So it all depends, you know, mainly what you want. If you want the pretty stuff,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And to that point about the signs, and so traffic control aside, I think there was also a recent request that came your way about parking control along River Oaks by the elementary school. Would that also be now,
That's association, because they just changed the parking in ours.
okay, association?
And I sent word back that take it to the school and have the school take it to the association.
There's another
Okay.
sign that
Now, the association, would the no parking, would that also require going through MCSE?
It probably would.
Any traffic control
Yeah.
signal or device.
Yeah.
Which would be
Parking.
yield signs, parking signs, no parking signs, fire lanes, any of that has to go through. So, but just call Craig or try it, my suggestion. Go through the master plan, verify, and I'm sure they have resources for condominium associations
Right.
that would enable us to maybe keep our fancy signs or whatever. Okay?
I wanted to put the little village seal on the top.
I know. What else? I've seen it done in Madison. It's like 10 bucks more or something.
Okay, moving on. Item J. Aye.
You moved it up, performance.
I think
road.
No.
We already discussed it.
Oh, never mind.
So I could direct it.
Did we talk about that? Do we need to talk about it some more?
We already talked.
Good.
Talk about it.
Okay. Item J, Genevieve Razick, website contract. I take responsibility for not bringing back the conversation that myself, Mrs. Razick, and Mr. Chandler had a couple months back. We're not getting that on the agenda. The increase in hours. Well, Kevin and I both agreed that additional hours, I think we had settled on 10 a week, which was 40 a month. And somehow, I think he missed that last meeting, and I totally forgot to add it to the agenda. But with that being said, in addition to the additional pay that we had agreed, the additional hours that we had agreed, we had also told Mrs. Razick, because she's had a lot of requests from organizations for her to create flyers. No, we're not gonna pay her to create for someone else,
They just pay her.
okay? As a matter of fact, we are requesting that organizations that they be notified, that she notifies them a particular format that she wants their flyers in, so that it's simpler for her to do what, but we're not gonna pay her to create the flyer. So, that being said, there were some additional hours, and Kevin and I both agreed that there would be months, and we're probably getting into that time of the year right now, where there will be probably less work, because there's just not much going on. And once we get past the holiday season, we'll get into January, February, and there probably won't be a whole heck of a lot going on, so it will probably all kind of balance itself out. So that being said, I do apologize for not bringing back the additional hours last month, and there was some confusion on her pay. But with that being said, I also want to take an opportunity to ask the treasurer, did you issue any checks to her?
Yes. No. Last week, no. 'Cause it
Okay,
was
you
coming
should have
before
issued
council.
$200, $300 checks.
It was coming before council, and I didn't want to just issue checks.
You should have issued $200, $300 checks.
Okay.
Okay, that amount had already been agreed to by council. And the fact that you took it upon yourself to withhold her pay, I think is in violation. But I'm not even gonna go there. So in the future, when we have these confusions, let's issue what we know has been authorized. And then we'll discuss what is in dispute, which is the additional 12 hours, or whatever it is, 12 one month, and
14 and 20?
okay. Yeah, something like that. Okay. And I also told Mrs. Roddick, don't do this 2-month stuff. at the end of every month, you turn in your hours. Don't let it accumulate. At the end of every month, you turn in your hours. You know, so that there's not this huge, and if she had turned it in last month, which I think was 34 or whatever, then the whole issue could have been resolved last month, because that would have brought it to our attention. So with that being said, the additional hours that myself and Mr. Chandler, and I wish he was here, I hate speaking for him, was 10 hours per week. A total of 10 hours a week, which we just concluded was 40 hours a month. So, with that, if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you have any,
Most of the billing this time was creating those flyers, and that's gonna,
yeah. If they don't supply a flyer, then we won't post their stuff.
have we established like a one-sheet criteria for people that want to post on the village website? We must have the business name, the address, the phone number.
That's the conversation that we're having, and that's one of the things that we've asked her to send out to people, to create and send out that, so they'll know that this is what we're looking for.
Okay.
We're definitely trying to clarify this, because we were getting some crazy requests. And we're also trying to stay away from requests that are, I'll say, kind of cross some lines. You know, we were getting, you know, we just gotta be careful what we post. You know,
Do you want a motion for approving that she be authorized at the 40 hours a month?
yes, I would appreciate it.
I motion to authorize that Mrs. Rozak be approved for 40 hours a month at the rate of, do we need financial numbers or anything?
I think it's 50.
Or $50 an hour.
Support. It's been properly moved and supported that Mrs. Rozak be approved for 40 hours per month for website work.
Can we change that to up to 40 hours a month?
Yes, sure, please, yes, thank you. Because when it's less than, we want it to be less than.
That's my bad, definitely.
And she will be focusing only on the webpage, right?
Social media website,
Social media website.
I think she also does the
Facebook.
the village Facebook page.
Mixed media.
Yeah, social media.
Social media, there you go, thank you. Any questions on the motion? Roll, please.
Trustee Magnuson?
Yes.
President Milbert?
Yes.
Trustee Vanderpump?
Yes.
Trustee Izia?
Yes.
Trustee Kreiner?
Yes.
5013C. This thing keeps coming up, and I asked the attorney, can the village even qualify for one? And he's gonna do some research, or do we need one? Because in our ongoing requests for just donations for different things, a lot of organizations, a lot of businesses request that we have one. Okay? For instance, when we do the Tiger tickets, we use the Baptist Church 501 because they request one. Okay? Even though we're a municipality, you know, we're, you know, nonprofit, they still request that particular document.
Do a municipality sale?
As I was telling Mr. President, I don't believe we do have the right to achieve that, but I don't want to give you a firm answer on that without fully researching it. Now, that being said, I truly think just your status as a tax exempt nonprofit entity gets you to where you actually want to be. So it might even be something that we can just find some research to maybe supply to some of these individuals to show them that what you're asking for isn't even needed.
We're not a charitable organization, right?
We are a nonprofit.
We're a nonprofit. attorney items.
Okay, first with attorney item A, Semco franchise agreement. I did have a conversation with Mr. Addis to give him an update on this. He has had a conversation with the attorney Assorti. Attorney Assorti does recall this franchise agreement being presented to him, but with his move from the prior law office into his current situation, he's not sure where it's at. Attorney Assorti believes that it was okay for him, that he didn't see anything, but Mr. Addis is still trying to track down the official copy to get final approval. If we have a copy, if we
I
can
think
get
I have a
that.
copy on an email.
If we can make sure Mr. Addis has that, my guess is it's fine, just from what we do know of it, but we would like to verify that in particular. For item B, in your packet, there were actually 3 different ordinances presented. I guess I'd like to address 2 of them at the same time as amendment to ordinance number 330. And it's actually done as 2 separate amendments here. One to amend the intent of the ordinance, and the second one to amend section 2A of the ordinance to eliminate it was actually to eliminate the then current 2A1, which kind of presented a loophole for this ordinance. I know this was an issue that we discussed several meetings ago. So both of these have been drafted. I believe they were presented to the board at the last board meeting for your review prior to this meeting for consideration and adoption. Obviously, we have reviewed it. We do find it legally sufficient, and that we do give approval for those amendments. Amendment to section 1, the intent of ordinance 330, as well as amendment to section 2 of ordinance 330.
Need a motion for those at this time?
Yes.
2 separate motions?
2 separate motions.
And do we have ordinance numbers?
So for the one that's number 330, do I do 346 and 347? Like back to back?
Correct, it's actually 2 separate ordinances.
Right now, okay, yep. So the first one will be 346, next one's 347.
346, you said? And 46 will do the intent? Okay. I make a motion to adopt ordinance number 346, an amendment to the existing Village of New Haven trailers and inoperable ordinance number 330.
This is 346.
Yeah.
Do we have support on that?
Oh, that was 347.
Oh, this is 346.
Yeah.
Support.
Been properly moved and supported that we adopt the amendment to section 1 of ordinance number 330. Any questions on the motion? Roll, please.
Trustee Renfro?
Yes.
Trustee Madison?
Yes.
Trustee Ezia?
Yes.
Trustee Cardinal?
Yes.
President Gilbert?
Yes.
Thank you, board. The final ordinance that I have. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun here.
No, I don't have over now. Those things.
So I make a motion to pass ordinance number 347, amendment to existing Village of New Haven trailers and inoperable vehicle ordinance number 330, amendment to section 2.
Did I hear support? Support. Been properly moved and supported that we adopt the amendment to ordinance number 330, section 2A, and it shall become ordinance number 347. Any questions on the motion? Roll, please.
Trustee Franco?
Yes.
Trustee Madison?
Yes.
Trustee Uziak?
Yes.
Trustee Breimer?
Yes.
President Gilbert?
Yes.
Okay, now I thank you for considering those. The final ordinance that I have presented for the board today, which I believe will be ordinance number 348, is an amendment to our water ordinance, allowing charges to be made as a lien against the parcel for any unpaid rates. Again, we have reviewed this. It is legally appropriate. It's actually very common practice in many communities.
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 348 as an amendment to the existing water ordinance 304, lien rights and lien timing. Section 19 of the existing water ordinance 304.
Support. Been properly moved and supported. So we adopt ordinance number 348, which amends section 19 of ordinance number 304. Any questions on the motion? Roll, please.
Trustee Breimer?
Yes.
Trustee Madison?
Yes.
Trustee Franco?
Yes.
Trustee Uziak?
Yes.
President Gilbert?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. The final ordinance that has been presented to you as of tonight is actually an ordinance that Trustee Vander Kerkhoff has requested our office to draft. I believe all of you have a copy of it. I think there's been some prior conversations regarding this ordinance. The ordinance authorizing initiation of proposed legislation, referral of existing legislation by an order. I'm not sure if Trustee Vander Kerkhoff wants action or if it's just for presentment tonight.
Yes, I would request action on this.
Why are you not seeing it?
What's that? Right. Okay.
Did I still do it?
I just got something.
I might still do it. Sorry about
So you could be running your.
that. I'm spreading it out.
Would you like to re-summarize it, or does everybody pretty much understand at this point?
Is this? I'm just.
It puts in place the, I'm sorry, the clarification.
This has already been through before.
This was brought up, I think, 2 months in a row, if not at least 1 month. And there was discussion on that previously. It basically puts in place a methodology for residents to gather signatures in order to get an item merely to the ballot, so that people can then therefore go vote. And they need, I believe, 200 and, according to 2016 most recent election results, because it's based on percentage of the people that voted the last time. At this point in time, they would need to gather 245 signatures. And I believe a 90-day period, I believe. Yes. No, 120 days, I apologize.
And you said you looked at this?
Our office has reviewed it. We do find that it meets legal requirements. I know there's been edits to this up until just in the last couple of days, hence why it wasn't in the packet. Obviously, I can always understand a board's hesitation about voting on an ordinance if they're just reviewing.
It was,
It would be the word.
right, the changes that were made to were actually to specifically address Trustee Pridemore's concern at the last meeting, and was about the clerk's role, as well as the township's role also in their hosting of the election itself. And there was some debate as to the responsibility of the clerk and or the clerk designee. So there's some clarification on that. And I also actually, at the table, you get see communication. I believe I forwarded it to people as well. Email with the clerk of Lennox Township, and she said that it would not be any problem, that they would be able to host the election. cost to be paid for by the village, if and when there is a cost. If there's a state or federal election that is to be held at the same time, that's actually paid for by the state or the federal anyway. So it wouldn't come at a cost. I did ask her approximately how much would the cost be, worst case scenario, if that is the only item between the village and the township, of otherwise is that to be held at that election. She said $4,000 is a conservative figure. It's less than $1 per resident of the village. What else did she say? She said that, and then she also did say that the township would have no problem in offering their facilities for the use of our village clerk to verify signatures. That was another issue that was brought forth. And additionally, went to the General Village Law Act, which does in 2 other locations specifically spell out the fact that the village clerk, not the township clerk, but the village clerk is the one responsible for verifying signatures. So it's not the township's responsibility, it's the clerk, and the township said that they are more than happy to offer their facilities use to verify the signatures. And they said they would not have a problem posting the election. And it wouldn't cost anything if it was on the state or federal election at the same time. If it's not, she said a conservative figure would be about $4,000 to host the election on a standalone ballot issue in and of itself.
What's the possibility, and I'm going to ask this question because it was mentioned to me a while back, I don't know how to move down the subject, that because we host an election every 2 years, that there was a Attorney General opinion a few years back that frowned on villages adopting ordinances of this nature.
In experience, villages are the only entity that don't automatically have some form of voter enablement, whether through the Home Rule City Act or other options, Charter Township Act, different things. And I think the general consensus has always been, because there is an election every 2 years, that if your board isn't doing what you want them to do, there's going to be an election in 2 years, and you can replace that board. I think that's always been the reasoning why this isn't automatically there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because, I mean, if we schedule an election, the county still has to certify the right, or before it even goes to a ballot, the county still has to certify it. And it's my understanding that, and I'm not trying to speak for the county clerk or anybody, but it's my understanding that they won't certify it.
My guess is they would certify it.
And certify may be the wrong word, but it would not authorize it, not typically authorize it.
To go on to the ballot?
Yeah, unless it's attached to a regular scheduled election.
Oh, I see what you're saying. There is a very, you're correct. I mean, there is basically several years ago, if you recall, you used to have all these special elections happening all over the place. And there were some amendments to the state law to try to eliminate that we basically have 3 or 4 days each year that can potentially even have an election. So this election would have to occur on one of those days.
Speak to Roger Cardone of the County Elections Commission, or whatever the title is, and he said that they approve the language, and as long as it is presented to their office by our clerk, certified as that being language that is requested to be on the actual ballot, then they will review the language as presented to see if it is sufficient, and if so, they will put it on. That's how it was referred to me at 2:01 p.m. November 8th. That's what they.
I'm sure I'll run into them. Because I do want to read the pieces. No, like I said, I'm just raising some issues that I know exist out there to make sure we're not just doing something that's never gonna, What's your pleasure?
Is there any, do we require an ordinance to enable the voters to do this?
For villages, we do, and that's what I'm saying. Other forms of government, there's items in place generally as a matter of right. You know, whether it's through the Home Rule City Act or Charter Township, or through a city's charter. You know, villages are the only ones I'm aware of that don't have an automatic option.
So no villages do referendums or initiatives?
No voter.
No villages?
Well, no, there are villages that have adopted similar ordinances to this, and that would be the method to create that possibility.
Do these ordinances limit the language on the ballot? This says legislation submitted to the elected shall appear on the ballot by ballot title only.
To be approved by the village. I'm sorry, by the village attorney.
So there's no description of what it actually means. So if the ballot initiative said, the ballot language, usually it's a question, shall the village of New Haven permit parking on Wednesday or whatever? Well, I know, but I'm saying, shall the village of New Haven permit secure transport, period? That's acceptable language for a voter to understand what he's voting on, right?
Generally, you have, whenever a ordinance is adopted, even an ordinance brought forth by an elector, you still have certain requirements that you even need to accomplish for it to be a valid ordinance. Okay, as we've even seen by the other three that our office recommended. You still need to accomplish that. Now, the reality is, whenever, and you even see this on statewide initiatives, whenever there is an actual vote of the people on should there be an amendment to the state constitution, or should there be this law passed or this law stricken, okay? There is generally language put on the ballot to summarize that action rather than the word for word, and then oftentimes that language would be, for example, at the clerk's office or some other location.
So would this clause prohibit that? If it says by ballot title only, if we adopted this ordinance, does that mean the voters would get one sentence? Or would we still be able to put a description of
No, you'd be able to definitely put a description on there. What it's doing is allowing for that shortened method, rather than the ballot being 12 pages long for an ordinance, which is what it's allowing. But you can definitely still create a description of what the intent is behind that ordinance.
Well, this says it shall appear on the ballot by ballot title only. It seems like it's kind of restrictive.
If you look through the definition of ballot title, kind of further.
So that's fine, you can still put a description in using this language.
One thing that I like about this is that it doesn't necessarily require the petition to go to election. It does allow for it to go to council and for council to act on it without requiring an election, which I think is kind of important. Because, you know, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to speak for the rest of you, but if I saw a petition with 200 and something signatures asking for something, I would definitely consider it without needing to move forward to an election. Just because I understand getting that many signatures for something is actually quite an undertaking.
Isn't it 15% of the registered voters? So you would take the wishes of 15% of the voters to enact something?
To be considered, I mean, we can always say no.
Takes a lot to get that many signatures.
I was going to say, I mean, we had a landfill issue, we had a recall, and you would think that would have been so easy to go, you think you'd get it in like a couple weeks, make a couple announcements, hold a couple rallies. And it was down with the wire, and we were out in the winter, blistering cold, knocking on doors, and we got it, I think, within the last week, which I believe, for recalls or whatever, I believe it was 90 days, you might know more so. But it took a while, and we had volunteers and everything, yeah, we'll go get signatures, and it just doesn't materialize as you think it would. It is difficult.
And they went to a vote, went to an election, where everybody had a chance to vote.
Okay, what's our pleasure?
I make a motion to pass ordinance number 348.
No, you know what, I apologize, 344, because remember the last meeting, you guys were tabled, yeah, I signed it.
Oh,
So
okay,
it was
okay.
344. But now I know moving forward, that's the way it comes down as we go to see.
So this right here would be 344?
Yes,
344.
yeah.
344 board, make sure that that's all supposed to be. Voter enablement ordinance.
Support. It's been properly moved and supported that we adopt ordinance number 344. An ordinance authorizing the initiation of proposed legislation and referral of existing legislation by an elector. Okay. Any questions on the motion? Roll, please.
Trustee Vanderpump,
Yes.
Trustee Myerson,
Yes.
Trustee Uziak,
Yes.
Trustee Breidenbach,
No.
President Milburn.
No.
Three to two.
3-2.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll research it.
Okay. Alrighty, are we done?
Clearly.
I don't know why that's even on there.
Clear blue homes.
That's
Excited.
Oh,
I thought, that was my question too. I thought
no,
we
that was
resolved
a
that.
type error, I apologize.
Oh.
Trying that out.
While it's on there, can we ask if we have any updates on that? I was calling.
No, I know that they requested,
They're doing their due diligence as far as a survey, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, and they wanted a copy of the, underground, the water and sewer, that was put out there. And because of some legalities, they had to make a FOIA request to see the drawings. And they haven't made a FOIA request yet. And we had to establish a bond. They had to want to take the drawings, copy, because we don't have machines that will copy these drawings. That they would have to post a bond to ensure that we got the originals back. And they also had to give us in writing acknowledging the fact that we are not authorizing you to use these drawings. They are proprietary to Lombardo. They paid for them, they created them, they filed them with the state and the county. So we're not authorizing you to use them. Use them at your risk. So, and they've done none of that. So, but as far as the purchase agreement and the vacant land addendum, that's all been signed and everything.
Yeah.
So,
We don't know, and again, it's not that many, but we don't know if the infrastructure that they're wondering if it's there or not. If it's there or not, we don't know.
they're saying it's more there than what we know about. But I'm not so sure of that until he get out there and release it. Payment of bills.
Taking into account the overpayment that we made, if you take that money off of the November bills, because it is on the November bills for payment. The new November amount is $164,438.85. bringing the new total to 197,281.41.
I'll repeat that, please. Last
Of course,
number.
I knew that moment. November total is 164,438.85. October stays the same, and then the grand total is 197,281.41.
I kind of like when it goes down. Don't do that often. What's your pleasure?
I make a motion to approve payment of the bills in the amount of $197,281.41.
Second.
Been properly moved and supported that we pay the bills in the amount of $197,281.41. Any questions on the motion? Roll, please.
Trustee Cole?
Yes.
Trustee Gizia?
Yes.
Trustee Madison?
Yes.
Trustee Brewer?
Yes.
President Gilbert?
Yes. Clerk's items?
Just requesting November 29th as a due date for agenda items. Oh, and then I also have the CDBG meeting Thursday, me and Sandy. And the minor home repair program is in effect, so I'll be publicizing that and having it be posted on the web. Yeah, so get the word out, guys. Thanks.
Cool.
Treasury items.
Total village assets were $3,334,599.09.
I make a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented.
Second.
Been properly moved and supported that we accept the treasurer's report as presented. Questions on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Unfinished business. Planning Commission update.
So for Planning Commission, we met last Tuesday. The main update that I have for the council is that we will be, well, actually two items. The planner, Mr. Jeff Schroeder from Macomb County, he actually presented us with a draft of a, for lack of a better term, a marketing packet. And very, very informative. It takes a little bit of information from the master plan, as well as some market research that Macomb County has done. I don't want to speak on too much of the specifics because the numbers are still up in the air. They wanted to do a little bit more research on the actual numbers. But basically, one of the outputs of this packet is that it actually will give a breakdown of the types of businesses that are in the village and the demand for the businesses and by category. So again, I don't want to go on the specifics, but I would say that clothing and apparel was the number one in demand category for businesses within the village. That we don't have any business that would accommodate that. So the residents are having to go outside of the village to meet their needs. So it's a pretty informative packet. It's in draft form right now. They are going to present the final to us next month. Once we get that, we'll be sharing it with the council and also adding it to the village website. And the intent then would be, as the planning commission markets the village to businesses to try to get them to build or come into the village, that this is a ready-to-go packet we can hand them, and it gives them all the information. It had traffic figures, demographics, everything. So it's a really great packet. I apologize, it's a little bit of a tease since I don't have anything to present with it, but take my word for it, it's really cool.
It really is. It's informative.
It's the
Yeah.
first time in years we've got information like this for the planning commission, so thank you.
Yes.
It's informative. That packet that we put together it's a good read.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting just seeing the different breakdowns for the categories of businesses and what would be considered in demand. It was interesting. There was, I think it said 7 restaurants, which I know you kind of sit there and it's like, wait, 7? But I guess when you break it down, Subway, the Chinese restaurant, Carter's Cantina, Coney Island, it adds up. The second update for the planning commission is moving forward, the next step that we have is we're going to be reviewing the sign ordinance, or I guess ordinances, as I understand there might be two. And we'll be reviewing those to one, bring them into code and bring them up to date, trying to get it to be a lot more specific and get a lot more clarity on the ordinance itself. I believe Mr. Schroeder said it was going to be quite a lengthy process. I think he mentioned something to like April before we would even be able to bring it back to council. But just wanted to give an update that that'll be kind of one of the items that we're going to be narrowing in on, in addition to most of the zoning ordinances in general. That's all I have.
Thank you. Item B.
So village manager discussion, this was something that we had tabled in one of our previous meetings. I wanted to bring it back up again. I definitely want to say this is not meant to be a reflection on President Gilbert at all. I think he's doing a great job. But on a day-to-day operations, having somebody here full-time working for the village, looking for grants, writing grants, applying for grants, managing the daily operations within the office. I think that could be something beneficial to the village. And I think that as part of that, I think one of the things that everybody has had a concern on is cost. And I think that if we write the RFP or the proposal for a village manager in such a fashion that their salary has to be offset by grants or some other form of income that they can bring to the village, I think that would then offset the salary cost. We could also have performance stipulations as far as what we would expect to be accomplished as their time as a village manager. Trustee Chandler isn't here. Him and I had spoken previously about this, and he had brought up a good point that village manager isn't going to be around for quite a while. That somebody in that position, they're either going to do a really good job or they're going to not do a really good job. If they're doing a really good job, they're probably going to get headhunted to go somewhere else. If they're not doing a good job, we're going to fire them. We're going to get somebody else. So, it's not somebody that would be here, maybe 5 years at a time. But, I think it's something that we should investigate or look into. I think it would be really beneficial for the village to have somebody here full-time managing the operations, looking at grants, just, seeing what we can do. I know I've spoken with some of the other trustees, and, I think all of us are very interested in being active participants, and having somebody, a village manager here to kind of manage that would also help.
So is there, I guess at this point, I'm wondering if anybody has, or maybe we should entertain a motion or that we put together an RFP, just so that we can look at it. Maybe we don't pass it necessarily the next month, but maybe we table it, look at it even more. But has there been any discussion as to an RFP being put together for this first week?
I think the first thing we need to do is take a look at the current ordinance. Okay, because if you put together an RFP without looking at the current ordinance, you couldn't keep violating that ordinance, and so you're just doing it's just for naught. So we need to make sure our ordinance says what we want it to say, get it updated, and then put together an RFP that reflects the existing ordinance, the ordinance that we.
There is an ordinance with village manager already on the books, correct?
In the book. And I think I provided a copy of that a year ago. But we can get that back out. That's what you can see.
Have you reached out to other communities to see the scope of the work that village managers are doing?
I don't know. But I
That
can
might
definitely
be
do that.
one of the first steps too.
Yeah, I can definitely, I'll take a look at the ordinance, and I can also reach out to not neighboring, but other communities in the area.
Yeah, so we can have an idea of expectations and.
Sure, definitely.
Go ahead, Mike.
In the communities that I've spoken with, or the village presidents and mayors and whatnot that once will have either city managers or village managers or whatever. They all pretty much say the same thing to the point where that if we undertake this, and I totally agree with them, we have to step aside and get out of the way. Because if we try to micromanage them, then we just created a mess. If you're gonna hire a professional, let the professional run the day-to-day. We serve as the board of directors. We set a vision. Okay? But we get out of the way. And I think one of the problems in the past is that past councils, and that's why we haven't had a village manager in, I don't know, 15 years or whatever, you wanted him to work for you. You wanted him to work for you. And it doesn't work like that. Okay? Let them do their jobs. And I have brought this issue up before, that personally, there's a lot going on here that we need a village manager. You know? Someone that's gonna run the day-to-day. I mean, and I can fill in the blanks, you know, meetings and stuff like that, but I can't be in two places at one time, you know?
Well, I think in a village manager or a manager council type of government, your duties would be kind of ceremonial anyway. They kind of take over everything.
And that's what they should be.
Yeah.
We are ceremonial.
Well, but you become a legislative about it in the council.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we're just a board of directors, so we are, you know?
But I think we reach out to other communities and have city managers or village managers, we can better understand the scope of what we could post in the RFP as to what our expectations are.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely take that as an action item.
Thank you.
I mean, it's like John Moore out of Richmond, who's been there for, I don't know, you know, he's probably one of the best around, you know? But he has a good working relationship with his board, but they allow him to do his job. And that's the important thing. You know, the elected officials that allow them to do their job.
I think as we've been bouncing back from, you know, the economy and the new building that's taking place, hopefully more business development, we're going to get busier and busier as a village.
And we'll have a more stable financial bottom line to afford it.
Yeah.
And I certainly hope that busyness just swamps us.
Right.
You know?
That's what we want.
Or a clothing store.
I want to have it around me and fish.
Tell you what, when you guys see that report, you're gonna, it's,
We might be upselling it too much.
it's a good read, it definitely is. So, we're gonna bring,
That is true.
I will make sure that we get a copy of the ordinance out to everybody, and, you know, so we can all look at it, and then, you know, if you have any suggestions for some tweaking, we can start having a discussion.
You said Richmond has one? That you know of?
They're the city manager.
City manager?
Yeah, John Moore, the city manager up here.
I think if you reach out to the MML, they also have information on that.
Perfect.
I think they even have examples of RFPs you can post. And there are also job listings where you could search and see what other communities are asking.
Right.
So it's a good database.
Cool. Thank you.
Item C, I assume we've already, okay. New business.
Legal representation. So I did set it down, no action requested at this time, but I did set down an example of what we actually agreed upon with prior legal representation, which for all intents and purposes was kind of the same firm, but under a different name, they changed names. But at this time, we do have a different attorney at the firm who represents us. And I don't believe he's been familiar with it previously. Again, I'm not asking for any action at this point in time. But it was an agreement that we voted on and passed as a council before with the prior attorney. And I would like for us to hopefully increase our expectations for more communication, not necessarily on legal opinions per se, not necessarily on strategy, not necessarily on thoughts and perspective on matters and whatnot, but at least at a bare minimal. And again, we could look at this, and this might be a good base, and we can take stuff out and add to it or amend it or whatever. But this is what was passed before, and I think we need to increase our expectations on regular updates. What I would hope to see is for a regular attorney report to be included in the consent agenda. Something to the matter of, okay, we have this open case, court docket number, blah, blah, blah. Next appearance will be on such and such date. Last action was XYZ as previously discussed. Something to that effect. We don't need to go into, I really think we're going to win this. I really think we should do this, or something to that effect. But just keep us advised as to kind of what's going on. I know that there's been a couple months in the last, half year or so, where at our regular council meeting, we didn't even have a closed session. So we, in effect, we basically went a couple months without really knowing necessarily what's going on with a $1 million lawsuit, with other matters that were either in the court system already or that we had talked about that we were nearly on the edge of going to court. And for a couple months of kind of being in the dark is to me it's unacceptable, and that's why I proposed this. And we can work together on something that's mutually acceptable. But I really do think we should expect a little more regularity in updates on legal matters. And so I'd like for council to kind of take a look at this. Again, this is what was agreed to before. Well, one of these is what was agreed to before, and then you'll see a different one is what I have is 90% the same, and at the very end was changed. The communication with council on pending legal matters, that was my suggested edit. The one that's longer. It got abbreviated previously. What council agreed to previously was a very much shorter portion of that. And I think we should increase our expectations. That's why I included the amended version and an email that kind of explained my thoughts on that matter from about 2 years ago, it looks like. And so I hope we can revisit this maybe next month. Maybe we can have some communication, either over the phone or whatever, with our legal staff. And then hopefully maybe next month or even, but soon, I would hope that we could agree to some sort of regular update. However abbreviated, however summarized, but some sort of regular update on legal matters that are either in the court system or things that we have considered and are otherwise being handled by our attorneys that may eventually end up in the court system.
I think currently how we do it, we go into closed session, we get a legal update. If there's something new to share. And personally, I would prefer to maintain that way of doing it. I would hope that our attorney does not put anything in writing, does not put an opinion in writing. Especially the comments that were made in closed session by Mr. Addis and how we communicate. While there's only 1 or 2 items out there right now, and I think going into closed session and having a verbal conversation is the best way to clearly communicate what is actually going on. And this is going to go back to what we just talked about. We hire a village manager. The attorney's not going to communicate with all of us. He's going to communicate with that manager. Like the attorney currently communicates with me. And that's just how it is. Because we get too much communicating going on, that's when we create problems for ourselves. And we just got to be careful that we can't. I understand the wanting to know, but when there's something to be shared, that's when we share it. And we go back in that room back there and we share. And prior to the meeting that myself and Mr. Addis attended last week, there was nothing particularly new on that one issue. But we had something new, so we shared it.
A few months ago, I felt that we weren't getting updates in a timely manner, and I requested to go into closed session for updates. We can always do that.
And we can make that a normal part of the agenda. I'd rather sit there and have a verbal conversation with the attorney instead of, emails or anything else, or putting anything in writing. I mean, we can make that a normal part of the agenda when there's something, it's, there's only 2 or 3 issues out there.
We can always go into closed session and discuss litigation. Obviously, one thing, and I think that the board is very cognizant of this fact, is when you're talking litigation, it's not necessarily fast. Courts are not known to be super fast. Obviously, if there is an issue that the board needs to be apprised of, it would be us asking to go into closed session to notify you. So, just because there isn't an update 1 month does not mean nothing's going on. I mean, sometimes you have, when you start a case and you have your discovery phase, you might have 6-9 months where, quite honestly, there is not an update. Now, from a layperson's point of view, you may think that that means nothing's going on in the case. No, actually, that's one of the more critical phases of the case. But it's the time for the attorney to learn all the facts and learn the other side's facts and what's all going on. So there isn't necessarily that update to provide at those times. But as far as when we are in litigation, that's one of the classic examples of when you are allowed to go into closed session for all main purposes. And I think it's a very wise method to utilize so that we can talk openly and frankly about the pros and the cons and our legal analysis and objectives without airing them to the public.
One just point of there. So, I guess one of the things, I mean, it could literally be boiled down to this, court case, docket number, whatever. I don't know if that's even a proper lingo. Correct me if I'm wrong. But docket number, blah blah blah, which is available to the public. I'm not asking. I mean, that's public knowledge, or can be. But I don't think any of us know right now. Could even look it up if we wanted to, other than to search and as anybody else from the public, we don't have access. I don't think we've ever been sent the docket number for the current lawsuit. So when a member of the public says, well, what's going on with that? Well, I don't want to answer the questions, obviously, yes, and but it would be nice to be able to say, you know what, well, here's the docket number. And I don't think it's too much to ask, at least to say, like, okay, just bring us up to speed. When was the last appearance and when will be the next appearance in the legal system? I think that's reasonable to ask in a summary of what's going on. Something to that effect. It could be as brief as that. That's just food for thought, and I hope that we can revisit this and whether we take a vote on it formally or otherwise just kind of reach a conclusion, because to this point, I just feel like we have been left in the dark. And again, I understand that it appears as though nothing's happening, but a lot can be happening behind the scenes, or maybe there is a lot of wait time and lag time. That's understandable. Things we can't do anything about. What's that?
So you know everything that's happening.
Right. What's that? With legal matters?
Yeah.
No, I just asked about the one issue that otherwise wasn't even about to be touched on.
It was going to be touched on, but it was said 2 or 3 months ago, let's do one at a time. Let's not start this one until we do this one.
But there was supposed to be, not in the court system, there was supposed to be something else happening up to that point.
And as far as the main issue, or
Right.
and we met last Tuesday or Wednesday, and you got an update within a week. I mean, it's just,
I just don't think it's, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for this docket number, and/or if it hasn't reached the courts, but we've otherwise agreed to have our attorneys handle something, just to say correspondence was sent XYZ date, waiting response, something like that.
To add to Trustee Vanderkoop, not so much on the summary aspect of it. The village council general requests under this policy here, upon verbal, written, or electronic request of any village council member, the village attorney shall in a reasonably expeditious manner respond to said council member's request for assistance in understanding legal matters, et cetera, et cetera. I kind of zero in on this one because I have sent multiple emails regarding a certain business which was brought to our attention, whether they're operating with a special land use or not, and trying to get an understanding of like what should we do about it, what should we be acting upon it, what's our recourse on it, and I didn't get any response whatsoever. I understand after our closed session about, communication methods, but at the very least, it would have been nice to get a phone call in return. Hey, I got your email, here's what we need to do. So, my concern isn't so much on the summary as much as it is just getting an answer, because my understanding is that the questions that I had do not qualify for closed session.
I think the topic that you're, I'm sure I know what you're, sometimes the questions go to the wrong person first. And I think, that's one thing that we need to get back to, is that instead of that question going to the attorney, that initial question probably should have came to me.
Okay. Sure.
And if I receive that question from you, I will provide you the information. Matter of fact, I have it here with me. I don't know who's seen this packet right here that will answer all your questions.
Okay.
And I hope one of you two tell that individual who keeps stirring up your Cheerios, go to hell. Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to see the packet, because that is,
Because I brought this purposely, sure, because I know what's in here, and like I said, when this all said and done, maybe we ought to take a look at him.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay. I'm sorry, are we, where'd he go? Oh, I'm chair over there. I'm sorry, are we done on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Call from the floor. I'm going to call you out because you've been sitting here for a long time. This gentleman, and these are the kind of business people that we're hoping to continue to attract. He has come to the office trying to find out what he can do in his zoning designation. And he said, I need to know what I'm going to be allowed to do and what I can do and what before my business grows and grows and grows. And then I got, oh crap, I can't do this no more. Because and please, introduce
By the way, my name is Ron Levy. I had a couple years ago now took over the grain elevator over here. And it started out with just me and kind of grew. So I'm trying to get here, and no one has said a word to me. So hopefully it hasn't been, but I wanted to come knock on your door because I have been listening. And I didn't come here to really make a statement as much as listen to your side of it. Because I do realize that in a good relationship, it is both sides. I know everybody here talked about what they needed and what they wanted, and I can hear what you guys need too. So I'm here just hoping out to figure out some way that I can stay, because I've enjoyed here. Where I'm at over there is nice and quiet. I think we've done good business. I don't think anybody's complained so I would like to see if I can't just make this solid between us and start somewhere. So that is why I came in to listen and say hello. Like I said, I mostly came here to listen the last couple times and just see what you guys had to say before I could really say anything at all. So that's it. I think you answered most of my questions just by this special, so we can definitely start somewhere. Any questions that you have, or, stop by anytime. And of all things, I have to admit, I truly do have a sob story, because we specialize in sobs. So just for all night, they were kept saying, everybody, I do truly have a sob story, so.
I like when you come forth for communication. purposes, that's awesome. We can try to work with them on that.
I didn't want, how I should have did it, how I could have did it, how everything else, because I would have known what to tell you, what to expect. I would have came in here 2 years ago and said I had a toolbox, and I had no idea. I think now I can define it more. We can have good business, and so, if you guys have any questions at all.
I just have a comment to add is that Mr. Dowd.
Dowd, yep, yep.
Mr. Dowdy also went to the planning commission meeting last Tuesday as well.
Yeah, and I look forward to it. It has given me a lot of insight. So I'm not just sitting there and, I mean, how I can help the city is a big thing. Whether, many things that we could sit down. I'm not a rich man, and the same thing that you guys were saying, you have to watch what you can afford, what you can't. I'm in the same position, but I am more than willing to make sure that I provide a place that not only am I proud of, the people of the community are proud to drive by, say hello. So whatever I can do to make that happen. Yeah.
Perhaps I could discuss it a little further, but, and this is your facility, correct? Nearby your facility?
Yes.
The property. So I think there should be some screening. I guess I know that we can discuss, but.
And that's why I'm here. There is, we talked about, I heard talk about a fence. We can do this right away, instantly. We can move those. There is a lot of options here. But like anybody else, I just want to get on board with you guys now. It's that time that it's not just what I think looks good, or is this like to me or not. It's everybody here in the community. So.
And that was my whole point of calling them out, besides looking at only back there. The fact that he came up here wanting to know what he could do, couldn't do, and just that fact right there, I just appreciated, that he wasn't trying to, establish something that we were gonna have to go over there and shut down,
So, definitely, I will be in contact with whoever, anybody wants to stop in, and we'll take it next month, or really, I think that, we can talk quickly. Just, like I said, like the other people said, I do need some guidance on who to talk to first, because, each person here has a different opinion. And I know if I go individually, I'll be painting it red to blue to green, and well, if you put this up first, I just need, as a board, some direction that I can start with, and, go from there.
Lori.
Yeah.
Because she's already checked the zoning, and that, because of that location along the railroad tracks, the zoning district changes just past that house.
Just past house.
So the zoning district does change, and what he's actually doing right there right now is allowed. But there may be some other things that, like I said, there may be some screening that may need to take place, some trees or whatever, or berm or whatever, but it is allowed.
So, anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Guys, have a great night.
Thank you as well.
Call
I
from the
don't want to
floor.
miss anything, should I stay?
Sure.
Call from the table.
Just a reminder, on this November 25th at 6:30 PM, the parade of lights start and the tree lighting.
And that's longer than last year.
And the community dinner at the high school.
Yeah.
This Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And additionally, the medical marijuana special committee meeting is Thursday.
Yeah, thanks for
At 6:30.
offering to share it. Thank you. I gotta get hold of the fire department and see if they need cookies.
I think they always need cookies.
They always need cookies. I do.
President Over, I know we had one item on the medical marijuana agenda that was for a representative from Clinton Township.
Clinton Township, I've talked to his secretary, Supervisor Cannon, and he's trying to get somebody, but he won't guarantee.
Okay.
They don't necessarily want to share their opinions. It's just your opinion. That's all.
Right. Well, we're
They
gonna.
videotaped it.
What's
Is that the one one that was videotaped, I sent you copies of the
I believe so,
videotape.
yeah.
They videotaped the whole thing.
Did it?
Yeah, I gave everybody a copy of the videotape and said, hey, look at this, it's got some good info.
Yeah, it's a good.
Is that the one that, not the one that was held at the college?
But, you know, it was Clinton Township, it was
That's the
already
one we
in.
watched, yeah.
Oh.
No big secret there.
Right.
Well, we can just set up the, projector and just show the meeting. See what the questions are, see if we can edit it. I have one thing, and I'll run through this quickly. And I had this discussion with Sandra, about a month or two ago. We were just, I don't know, we were on different subjects. And I was wondering, the additional cost when we go to payroll, and with Mrs. Roddick thing came up, that topic came up again. And I think you got it in front of you.
Some of those numbers are actually incorrect. Elected officials are not entitled to SUDA benefits, so the amounts on there are not supposed to be there. SUDA is the Michigan state unemployment, and because we're elected officials, we're not entitled to them, so we
Okay,
don't
so
have
that
to
column
pay.
can be eliminated
Mhm.
for elected officials.
And volunteer fire, because they're volunteer. I asked the ombudsman about that.
Okay. Then we'll have to make sure we're not paying these costs.
We're not.
Okay. Okay. So there is some additional cost when we go to payroll. I mean, direct deposit payroll, whatever. I think it's one and the same. But it's also my understanding that we have to pay workman comp no matter what. So the actual savings, if we deduct that SUDA or that portion of it. So on that unemployment, and everybody in this this column right here should be,
It should be a zero under SUDA.
okay. Okay. So with that being said, then the additional costs for being on payroll, minus workman comp. I can't do the math.
Well, if you're looking to add somebody to payroll as an employee, then you have to pay unemployment benefits on it.
Yeah, an employee.
Yeah.
But these are all just contract employees, I mean, just contract
Yeah.
people. And, yeah, I know all of our employees are,
Mhm.
you know, but you're just seeing what the additional savings could be if we kicked everybody off of payroll. I mean, all the elected and the contract employees, but then they couldn't be on direct deposit. And that's one of the things we were trying to,
I don't know that you can take us off payroll. Because we are receiving a paycheck where we contracted Genevieve to do a service for us.
but, I mean, can we just 1099 them?
Us as elected officials,
Sure.
I mean, it'd be something to look into, but.
Can we 1099 the inspectors? Because I think that's where it all started years ago. Someone wanted them to be on payroll and not giving consideration the additional cost that brought on. So it's kind of snowballed from there. And I mean, that's the biggest single group is between the inspectors and the fire department,
Mhm.
you know? I mean, that's where the additional, that's where a majority of the additional cost. But then again, with that being said, then we go back to issuing paper checks. Does that cost,
Of the checks, yeah.
I mean, how much does it actually save us? I don't know. Maybe that's something we need to look at, I mean, is just having them on direct deposit and having them on payroll and paying the additional is worth not having to do all the paper checks and the 1099s, but we still got to do W-2s.
Yeah, we still gotta do W-2s, we still do 1099 for contractors, and, might want to have the attorney look into taking the fire department off payroll.
But, I mean, are they all payroll right now?
Yeah.
Are they?
They get paid quarterly.
That's right, they get paid quarterly, yeah, that's right.
As fascinating as this is,
Yes, it is.
I know.
Hey, I can talk payroll all night.
But, you know, that's something that we can just continue to have a conversation about, and just, and, you know, we really gotta crunch the numbers to see which way, you know. Call from the table. Motion in order.
Motion to adjourn. 10:13.
Second.